Pandora's box is about to open wide.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is the return of Jake Ayerst. So about 6 months ago, we had Josh Ayerst on the show. Obviously, Bullwinkle's oldest brother, one of my oldest friends. And this is the return of Jacob Ayerst, obviously the middle bro, the dark horse. I say Jake has been on the show before, but like years ago now. I think it was like before you even moved to Oz, wasn't it?
It would be about exactly 3 years ago because I went to Australia 3 years ago next week.
Man, that's crazy, isn't it? That's crazy. Time flies. So yeah, if you want to go watch the first episode we did with Jake all those years ago, you can go and find it on like Spotify or YouTube. Just type in Pandora's Box Podcast and scroll back 3 years worth of shows. But yeah, I think on that episode we talked a lot about loads of stuff from like Countess Bathory to like a lot about the Arthur legend, all stuff like that. So if you like your history, definitely go and watch and listen to that one. But yeah, man, cool to have you back. Obviously, you live in Australia nowadays, but you're back like just like visiting family for a little bit. How long are you back in the UK?
About another week. I had a month back for a mate's wedding.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, most of that has gone quite quickly now. So going to go back, and then I've got another 2.5 year visa.
Nice.
And then
you almost like said that a bit like an Aussie then. 2.5 year visa?
2.5 year visa. Yeah. I've got a little inflection sometimes. To be honest, as soon as I got back in this country, it kind of disappeared. Even the way I said country then.
Yeah.
But like while I'm over there in a different context, yeah, my accent's definitely a little bit stronger. Maybe not that, because that didn't even sound Australian. Mate,
it was good. Whatever it was good. Yeah. So, whose mate is it? Well, who was it that got married? Was it somebody?
Do you know Jack Popham?
Yeah, I do actually. But I think I don't know if he still does. But once I was picking up a tie from back when it was Malawans. It's just changed now. It's called what's it called now? It's like Alex's Tie Kitchen on Penalorlu. And I was picking up a tie from there once, and then he went, "Oh man, you look the Pandora's Box guy." And I was like, "Yeah, man." He was like, "Oh, I listen." He was like, "I don't know if he still is." He was like, "Oh, I'm a delivery driver. I listen to your show like while I'm driving around every week." And I was like, "Oh man, that's freaking sound."
Yeah, have you ever seen Tim's Tippers driving around? Yeah, that's his company.
Is it?
So he delivers, I don't know, rocks and stuff, I think.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, man. You see those Tim's Tippers everywhere around here, don't you?
Yeah. Well, that's Jack when you see it. So shout out to Jack.
He's throwing people off. It's not Jack's tipper. It's Tim's.
Well, that's his dad.
Yeah, no. I just thought I'd do a real bad dad joke. Yeah. Yeah, but no, I thought that was really sound. I didn't know if maybe he was like a relation to Harriet Popham or something like that.
Yeah,
is it?
That's his cousin, I think.
Oh, yeah, well, it makes sense, wouldn't it? I think they're like they're one of those families, aren't they, like around here? There's just like, they get about.
There's only about 4 local families, really, I think.
Yeah, probably.
Once you get outside of Bridgewater.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. How are you liking Oz anyway, man? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I love it. There's definitely things like about this country that I miss, and I kind of forgotten those because like when I came on the radio show last time, all those years ago, I wasn't far out of my degree, which was in medieval history, and like that was the stuff I was obsessed with. And I kind of didn't know how I was going to enjoy it over there because obviously there is no medieval history or much distant history there.
Yeah.
So I got over there.
History of crocodiles.
Yeah, exactly. There is a decent history of them, how they tread culling them over the last 50 years, and they actually shrank in size massively.
Is it?
Yeah, they were gigantic.
Well, they culled a lot of the saltwater crocodiles.
Well, they used to hunt them for, I don't know, crocodile leather, I suppose. I mean, you can eat them, but only like a tiny little fillet of their tail.
Yeah, like Crocodile Dundee style.
Yeah. So they made them a lot smaller by hunting the biggest ones.
I suppose that makes sense. So just in very simple terms, obviously, if you kill all the big males, then they can't then mate and then pass on their big genes, essentially.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, the massive Levi's.
Yeah.
That was an even worse dad joke.
Funny enough, I was thinking of the same thing. I was like, they can't even pass on their massive, their 40-inch waist.
You can't really say big jeans without just thinking of a big pair of trousers.
No, exactly, yeah.
Or pants, as they'd say.
Yeah, they're certainly not 30-inch waist. They're like 40-plus inch waist. So now you've just got a bunch of 30-inch waist crocodiles in Australia instead. Yeah.
But,
I mean, it makes sense in a way, because they are like legit man-eaters, aren't they?
Yeah, and I think they were like trophy hunted initially, like when people started going up to like Queensland back in like the 30s or whatever. I guess it was just like an interesting thing to shoot and have a photo of you stood next to it. It was like gigantic.
Classic, just like human stuff. Like, oh, that would be cool.
Yeah.
It'd be cool if I just shot that and took a picture of myself next to it.
Yeah. I mean, they are getting bigger again now because they've been protected for, I don't know how long enough to start getting bigger genes.
It's sort of like you see that with a lot of animals, don't you, around the world? Like there was a period of like massive sort of just killing of them.
Yeah.
And now they're like slowly making a resurgence, aren't they?
Yeah.
I think it's the same with like great white shark populations, because after Jaws came out, everyone it's like true though, isn't it? Like everyone just started like killing sharks.
Well, it was a thing in Australia, whenever there was a shark attack, which there are like more frequently than you'd think, I think. Like,
Right.
not all the time, but I mean, every few weeks you'll hear about one. Cause,
Serious?
Yeah, there's a lot of people in the ocean over there. So, like, obviously, like, the ratio is tiny, the amount of people in the sea compared to the amount of people getting bit by sharks. But it's still frequent enough.
Yeah.
So in the past, they would have all gone out, all the local guys with boats would have gone out on their boats and just killed whatever great white they could see and assumed that was the right one.
Yeah. Just hoping that it was the right one.
Yeah. Whereas they've been protected for a long time now. So
I guess there's a broad spectrum as well, isn't it? Like a shark attack could technically just be like a bite on a toe. It doesn't have to be like you're ripped in half by this like 20-foot man-eater.
Well, there is a thing. Like, there's a guy actually he was like an Australian Navy diver who got attacked at Woolloomooloo, I think, in Sydney Harbour. And he became like a shark advocate. I think his name's Paul something. You might have seen him. He does Shark Week. He's got like missing arms and legs.
Mate, that's nuts.
But they're all like bionic, and now he like goes around protecting sharks around the world.
Mate,
and...
it sounds like they put him on the payroll.
Yeah.
They bullied him so much. Yeah. He's got like Stockholm syndrome.
He's had to strike a deal with them.
He's got Stockholm syndrome. They're like, mate, if you want your last remaining limb, you better start advocating for us. Honestly, sharks are amazing. As he's like hobbling around.
Well, that was he was saying that you shouldn't call them shark attacks. Oh, I can't do an accent today. I don't know what.
Mate, it's whenever you're on the spot, isn't it? It's whenever you're on
the thing
spot.
is, I can't do accents. Like, when I said that it happens accidentally when I'm in Australia, when I'm with people speaking it. So if I actually try and turn my mind to doing it, it comes out whatever that was, like Norwegian or something.
Yeah,
There's a thing, isn't there, where you mirror whatever you're around. So, like, if you
Yeah.
were to be in America for a little while, you'd probably start mirroring an American accent in places.
Yeah.
So it's probably just that.
not.
Yeah.
Depends on the American accent. Doesn't it? I think the southern US accents are cool, but like I think whenever you hear like a Californian accent, it sounds a bit annoying.
You wouldn't want to sound like a valley girl back.
You know that proper like, oh my god, I went to the mall today, and it's like, oh my god, that's quite like grating, isn't it?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
But like a Boston accent or like a Texan accent's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Like, hey, I'm from Boston. Hey,
There are accents in Australia, but it takes a while to get your head around them as well, because like you've got
like the different regional accents.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, even within Sydney, you've got the side that I live on, so like the beaches and the eastern suburbs. That's a little bit more kind of English, so it's more like what you'd hear in what was that TV show, Neighbours or something?
Oh yeah, Neighbours.
Yeah.
What classic show.
Yeah, a bit more like that.
Everybody loved Neighbours back in the day. Is that even still going? I wonder if that's still going.
I don't know, but I think they filmed it up the beach from where I live, a place called Palm Beach. It's really nice little spot. Yeah.
Nice.
But then you've got like the West Sydney accent, and that's quite a weird. It's like a mixture of like Islander, Lebanese, Greek and Italian. Yeah, there's a lot of Lebanese people in Australia.
Mate, I did not know that.
Yeah, they call them Lebos. It's not a slur.
Oi, Lebos. That, to be fair, that sounds like a very like Aussie thing to say.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a labber.
Yeah, he's a labo.
It's a cheeky
mate.
labber.
Yeah. yeah. They don't mean it as a slur. It's just they put O on the end of everything over there, like Ambo, Butterlo.
Yeah.
But yeah, their accent's a bit more like, I don't know, what would be an example? I'm gonna sound stupid again, but something like or cuz that's hectic. That's hectic cuz. Something like that. Yeah. But rather than the normal sort of, hey, you going, mate?
Right.
Coming down the beach to play some footy.
Right.
And then you got like the Queensland. When we lived up in North Queensland, that's a bit more like, hey, you going, mate? You going
A bit more like gruff.
Yeah, it's actually really hard to do any of those accents without putting in any of the words that Australians tend to.
Yeah. See you next Tuesday.
Yeah, a bit of that, because that's just like not even a swear word.
Yeah.
I remember I went to Manchester a year or two before Evie was born, and I just ended up like chatting a lot to this Aussie that was just there visiting, doing sightseeing, and he just turned out he was like a Metler and he was a pretty cool guy, so I was just like chatting to him a lot, and I was chatting because in Australia. They're almost like, I know they're not like identical, but almost like their version of almost like a chav in some ways is like a bogan, isn't it? So it's almost like a bit of like they're a bit like, they're not an upstanding member of society. They're almost like, you're probably just, but rather than finding them like piking off people in town centres wearing like cheap tracksuits, they're like out in the frickin' like in the swamps or whatever. Like
the urban ones, that's like a separate category. That's an esche.
Is it?
Oh,
I've
he's
never heard
Eshe.
that before.
So that's like their word for a chav, pretty much, in
Right.
Eshe. So
Right.
it's pretty much the same sort of thing. Like they'd listen to like Australian drill. They'd have those little rat tails, but they'd go around on their scooters,
Right.
wearing like Nike TNs and you know,
Right.
pretty much a chav. And then outside of the cities, then you've got like the bogans who drink VB and never wear shoes and wear like a fishing jersey.
Quite a different
everywhere.
group.
Almost like their equivalent of like the inbred sort of rednecks
Yeah, a
you
bit
think
more
of in America.
rednecky, yeah.
Like,
Because sometimes they can be rich as well. Like when I lived up in Queensland, there was a lot of rich bogans. They drive
Right.
around in these massive like pickup trucks,
Yeats.
like full of like
Yeats?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
call them
the
Yeats, don't they?
Yeah,
Utility
yeah.
vehicles. Yeats. Yeah.
And like the back would just be full of like thousands of dollars of like, I don't know, hunting and fishing equipment or whatever. So they'd be rich, but they'd still be a complete bogan.
I'm not going to lie, sounds pretty good to be a rich bogan.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I was jealous.
I want to be
of them.
driving around frickin' with
Yeah.
frickin' bows and arrows and
Yeah.
fishing rods in my
Yeah.
back, in the back of my ute.
Just a cooler full of VB as well.
Yeah.
That's like the bogan drink, VB.
What's that then? What is it?
Victoria Bitter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's actually lush. It's like just a fizzy, cold bitter. Yeah, but it's nice.
Well, like an alcoholic drink, like a beer.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Oh, cool.
Yeah, but yeah, and they'd depends where you are in Australia, what sport you support as well. Because if there's a thing called the Barassi line, and it's like a line from, well, essentially the one side of it is just like Queensland, New South Wales, and a bit of Victoria, so Melbourne, and then the other side is like Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, Darwin. And on that side of the Barassi line, they all support Aussie rules football.
Yeah.
And then the other side, they all support NRL. Like I've got my Sea Eagles jersey on at the moment.
So is that rugby?
This is yeah. So rugby league,
So what's that like? What's the N stand for?
national.
Oh,
Rugby
okay,
League.
National Rugby League. Right,
Yeah. So like, it depends what side of the country you're on, whether you're into rugby league or
rugby union.
yeah, or Aussie rules.
Or Aussie rules.
Rugby union's not really that popular over there.
Is it not?
Nah, they didn't really care about it too much.
That's weird though, considering they've pretty much always had like a top 5 team.
Yeah,
I
I
mean?
mean, people still support Wallabies. Like, we've got the British and Irish Lions tour this summer, and then Wallabies is obviously going to be playing them, and that'll be a big deal. I mean, I got a ticket, and it was like $400, so like,
Nice, man.
There's still a crowd for that, but like otherwise, if you're like on my side of the country, you're more going to be into rugby league. So
Right.
like, this is and it's like super regional as well. So this is Manly Warringah Sea Eagles, so that's like specifically the suburb that I live in.
Nice.
And like, it's pretty cool. Like the gym I work in, you know, I'll see the players like going around my shopping centre, and even though they're
nice,
like
man.
national celebrities, it's just so localised.
Mate, that's nuts.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool. That's
and
pretty
you
cool.
go, there's a place called The Stain in Manly. It's like a
Yeah.
big famous pub on the waterfront, and they sponsor one of the players, and you go in there on like it's actually a Manly game today, so it would have been the case in their evening today, which has already happened, confusingly.
Yeah, sure.
That like the pub would have been full of people in this jersey all supporting like the same local team. Yeah.
It's funny, isn't it, how you say with like the time difference. I always think that with like New Year's, like you'll always be like walking around, say like midday New Year's Eve, and then you'll just see on telly like everyone in Australia already like celebrating it on the fireworks, and that. It always seems a bit strange, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, literally it's the other side of the planet, isn't it? But
Yeah.
I suppose with what you're saying about rugby league, it is a little bit similar in this country. Like basically, once you get north of the Midlands, people tend to be more into rugby league, like Leeds Rhinos and all those like league teams are like really big in the UK. Whereas in the south, nobody really cares too much about rugby league. It's way more rugby union.
We've got a really good rugby union area here, haven't we? Because we got Bristol Bears, Bath, and Exeter.
Yeah.
I think it's all to do with private schools.
That was a bit Aussie as well. Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it's accidental.
Private schools.
If I tried to do it, it sounds stupid.
Yeah. Just has to be authentic. What you reckon it's what? Because
They kind of filter them out. They have talent scouts that go to places like Millfield and
Right.
Taunton and Eton and Harrow and all those places, and they'll literally just funnel the best players into like a rugby union team. Whereas I don't think rugby league ever had that. It's like a working class sport, and I think that's why in Australia rugby league became the popular one, because rugby union's a bit too sort of posh English.
It's so funny, isn't it, that would almost be considered posh. Like, because don't get me wrong, they do always say, don't they, that what's that old saying, like, football is a gentleman's game played by ruffians or something. Yeah, by hooligans, and rugby is a hooligan's game played by gentlemen. Or whatever.
Yeah.
So there is an element of that to it, I do think. And like, I think in general, like, yeah, you see, like, if you think of, say, like the big, like England football stars, they tend to be a little bit more like weird and chavvy than say like the international rugby union guys. Do you know what I mean? They always seem a bit more like well-spoken and a bit more like upstanding members of society.
Yeah, they're all like privately educated.
Yeah, they're not like constantly cheating on their wives, and their wives haven't like got ridiculous amounts of fake tan and vajazzles, and just driving the same stereotypical Range Rovers everywhere, like, you know, like,
yeah. And I think like I'm pretty sure rugby. I don't know if this is a real story or a little bit mythologized, but like rugby was invented at a private school called like rugby, because like a guy had like
picked up the ball,
had the insane idea of picking the ball up.
I love
for
that
some
story.
reason everybody was just like sweet.
I always think that's such a weird story, isn't it? Like if you think about it, like it's a bit strange. Like he just broke the rules, like, and you'd think that like if you just did that, people would be like, what are you doing?
Put the ball down.
Like, what
instead
doing,
they would so I guess now we play rugby.
I love the idea. Everyone's like, why haven't I thought of that? That's amazing! Oh my god!
Yeah,
that's freaking nuts.
I like the idea that that's why they introduced the handball rule into football as well, because people just couldn't stop him. How do you stop this guy? He's carrying the ball around.
Yeah, because it's like so unprecedented. There wasn't even a rule for it. I suppose. So what do we do now? We can't penalise them.
Tell you what, though, like rugby league, it's a fit man's sport, isn't it? It's like tiring.
Yeah. Well, you don't have like the same. Obviously, you've got the bigger guys. Like the forwards are still a bit bigger, but like not the same disparity that you've got in rugby union, where the forwards are essentially like brick houses, and
so good.
It happens a lot.
And
post watershed.
And then the backs are like the whippets that can like run up the sides and stuff. Yeah, whereas in rugby league, everybody's kind of
jack of all trades, athlete,
bit more in the middle. They need to be able to run as well as tackle.
And be fit and be strong.
Because the scrums aren't even contested. Like they literally just bend over, touch each other's shoulders, and then stand up again.
I always think it's almost like a bit weird watching that. I have to say, I think that like to be fair, I've never ever played a game of rugby league, but I always think like I probably wouldn't like it as much as playing rugby union rules.
No. Well, I was a forward because I'm big, so like I couldn't play league. I'd be rubbish at it. Slow.
Exactly. And I think all of that is like, you know, like scrums and rucks and mauls are just really fun.
Yeah.
So they are, aren't they?
Yeah. I don't want to have to run anywhere.
But if you just like let your scrum and then just like impose your will a minute, and then just get the ball up to some like nifty fast lad.
Yeah. Although having said that, when I played second row, I used to constantly get kneed in the face in a scrum. That's probably the least fun part, but I was good at it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think rugby is just one of those things like you just have to embrace that, don't it? Like if you're overly precious, rugby's not a game for you. I mean, I remember like scrum collapses and stuff happening, and like sometimes you will like, I mean, people are wearing studs, like you might get your head stamped on with a studs, and like obviously it's not very nice, but it's like if it bothers you that much, it's probably not the game for you, isn't it? You know, like take up darts or something. You know?
I think that's more a game for me nowadays. I think darts. I could probably be more physically attuned to that now than I would be rugby.
Oh, don't get me wrong, darts is really fun. I mean, I think the thing that sort of sucks as you get older, like more like sort of getting into your 30s and stuff, is more like just injuries. You know, it's like when you're in school and stuff, it's almost like you're like injury proof, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like mad how like you'd have to do something, I feel like, so radical to get like a legit injury in school.
I don't remember ever having an injury in rugby. The only thing that happened, which I'm almost embarrassed to say now, I think I was a little bit too theatrical. But sometimes if I wanted like to really get some attention, I just bite my lip so my lip bled, and then let it like run down my chin so that I could be like, went in really hard in that tackle.
Sure.
Yeah, but no proper injuries. Whereas, over the years since, I mean, I think that's why a lot of people get to around our age and then their sport is the gym, because that's how you manage your injuries.
That's it. Yeah, a lot of people, they get into sort of weightlifting, a lot of the time because maybe they play rugby or something else and they get an injury and they're sort of like rehabbing it, and then they're like, actually, this is really fun. Yeah, this is really fun in itself. You know?
Yeah, and I get to just compete against myself and not some guy who's trying to like take my head off.
I think by the time you're like 35 as well, if you're like 35. And you're sort of in between sort of like 16 and 20 stone, and you've got other men that are in between 16 and 20 stone, and you're like running full pelt into each other. Like, do you know what I mean? It's like that's a lot of wear and tear on the human body, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
Have you seen that game? It's become a bit of a sensation in Australia called Just Run It.
No.
It's essentially... it's just a tackle. So it's a bit like British Bulldog, but obviously like a safe rugby tackle is a wrap. Instead, they just put their shoulder down. So they just run into each other as hard as they can. One person with the ball, the other person.
Mate, that sounds like a well-fun game.
Yeah, see who stays standing.
Mate, I love how almost just like that's like a barbarian sport, isn't it?
They've started actually like there is some kind of semi-official competition doing it, and it's essentially just these like massive islanders doing it. It looks brutal, but like I think the first person's died from it like last week or something.
Oh my God.
Mate, I'm not surprised.
That
they're all
sounds
just
brutal.
getting concussions like every.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
I'm not surprised. Man. Yeah, it's just gonna cause brain damage, isn't it? Like,
yeah, definitely. You're asking for CTE, but I think a lot of them are like ex-rugby league players anyway that probably already have it, so they're just.
Oh mate, well I've got this far. Got this far.
What is there to lose at that point?
Might as well just see it through now.
Might
as well just see it through.
But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
How similar do you find it, like say living in Oz? Because obviously, I think they're far more similar to us culturally than say United States of America. Whether that's just because they've been, Australia haven't been separated from us for as long or whatever. But obviously, they love cricket, love rugby, even if they also have their own things and that. But they still, still love rugby, cricket. Obviously, they love things like fish and chips, and they love saying mate, same as us.
It's to be honest, there's not that many differences. A lot of Australians wouldn't like you to say that because they want it to be its own thing. But
what is it they call us? Poms.
Yeah, Poms.
Bloody Poms.
Yeah, and that's kind of there's a few different potential origins for that, but I think the most likely one is that it's kind of a slight rhyme of immigrant pomegranate, and it was,
I love how that's like so bad, isn't it? That's like so bad.
Maybe in whatever accent people had when they first went over there, maybe that
surely
worked,
they would have just sounded English when they first went over there, or like British.
I guess so. Well, I think their accent now just comes from like it's like putting every British accent and Irish accent into a blender.
Yeah,
because sometimes someone will
sound a bit Aussie then as well.
In a blender. Well, sometimes they'll sound a bit Midlandsy, and other times they'll sound a bit Scottish, and obviously most of the time they'll sound a bit Cockney because that's where most of the emigration was from.
So that's where all the criminals are.
Yeah. And then since then they've had like loads of, it's a melting pot for the whole world now. So it's not just like British immigration.
As you said, Lebanese people.
Yeah.
Did people move? A lot of the Lebanese people move after like the destabilization of the country. What was it in the 70s?
I would assume so. To be honest, I don't know. I've not really met any Lebanese people there. I just know that like
there's some Lebos there.
There's such a Lebo demographic that like they even call what we would call football in some places they call it Lebo ball because it's all Lebanese people playing it.
Mate, that is so freaking Labo ball.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so funny. Yeah, no, I'd be interested to know because obviously it seems like quite like a specific thing if you know what I mean.
Yeah, but then there's a lot of Croatians, a lot of Greek. Like there's places you can go to in Sydney where, you walk down the street and it's all like Greek cafes with a load of old sort of tanned guys with slick back hair drinking coffee, but they've got Australian
every
accents.
Single one.
Yeah, but it's literally like you feels like you're walking through like a mafia film or something.
Nice,
but like they're Australians, but it's an area where it's just populated.
Their parents
by Greek
are all
immigrants.
Greek immigrants.
Yeah, they'll have names like Papadopoulos or whatever. So like. It'll be.
I mean, that's completely reasonable, but for some reason, it just sounds like it's almost taken. It's like, right, what's the most stereotypical Greek name I can think of? Papadopoulos.
Can you be racist against Greeks or xenophobic? I suppose you can if you're English.
I guess if you're English, you can be racist about anything. I love how it's like that's how it works. Like if you're a certain culture, you can say anything and it's not racist. But if you're British, you can say anything you say is racist.
Well, there's a thing, isn't there, that America's meant to be the last country that you're allowed to be xenophobic against. Like anyone can be like, oh, bloody Americans.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah.
Maybe we won't go too far.
I feel like even like Americans are like that about themselves. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean? Even a lot of Americans,
especially Green Day.
Yeah, especially those Green Day. I mean, American idiot. A bit I thought the Brits are supposed to be self-deprecating. You know? British idiot. That'd be like us starting a band calling it British, like getting a song called British Idiot.
Maybe that would just be like because obviously American Idiot's meant to be a bit edgy.
Yeah.
But if you over here called yourself an idiot, people wouldn't even notice, I suppose. It'd just be like, it'd be weird if you didn't.
Yeah, because that's just we were talking about this recently actually. It's like the British way, isn't it? It's like one thing that we find as British people almost uncomfortable about Americans. Even though actually it's quite a nice thing in a way. but they're all quite naturally confident and quite happy to sing. You know, if they're good at something, they're quite happy to just say that they're good at it.
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah.
in Britain, that's almost like frowned upon. It's almost a bit cringeworthy. Like, oh no, can't do that. Can't do that.
I remember seeing a gig recently, a guitarist called Mike Dawes, and he'd just been on a massive tour of America, and he was like, the thing over there is the Americans, they cheer for themselves, like when you know he finishes a song, like rather than we're just like, super impressed by the music, and they're just like quite saying funny things, like, you know what I mean, like a bit of what's it called, heckling and stuff and jokes in the crowd, or like, well, when we went to the OPEF gig and he was like, and someone was just like, shit your pants. You know what I mean?
That was the most British thing ever.
Yeah.
I always think that must be so funny for like foreign bands whenever they come to do a gig in Britain. It's like, we're so odd in a way. Not only are we self-deprecating, but we're so odd. Like me and Josh and Drew went to see OPEF in Bristol a couple months ago. And like, you think like, you know, they've been doing this like big tour OPEF. So like in every country, I can imagine Scandinavians are probably just quite chill and like, you know, they're not that emotive, just very like almost like stoic. Yeah. And then I don't, you know, like, Americans probably going like really like, yeah, man, like, and then it comes to Britain and it's just like, he just basically started going on about how he had a curry last night, and then there's like literally a shit your pants chant started in the crowd, and then the whole crowd were like, shit your pants, shit your pants, shit your pants, and like you could see they were almost a bit dumbfounded, like as Swedes, just like, what? Oh yes, I guess we're in England again. Yeah, it's like literally just like to be fair to Aussies, I can imagine the only other country that would happen would probably be Australia.
Yeah,
it's such like a weird thing just to chant. Like,
I think like going back to what you were sort of saying earlier about the cultural similarities. Yeah. I think that's definitely one of the things that we sort of share with Australia that maybe not so much with America, even though that's a kind of close other one, is like there's a big idea of like a sort of tall poppy syndrome type thing. So in Australia, you're not really meant to like praise yourself or shout out how good you are too much.
It's like frowned upon, yeah.
Yeah, it is a little bit. There's an expectation almost to like a toxic extent where at least on the surface in Australia, you always have to be chill. You're not allowed to give a damn about anything. And if you do, it's seen as you being like too unchill. Like you're supposed to just relax and walk. You know, that's, I think the best sort of example of that for Australians is a shoey. Do you know what I mean by a shoey?
No.
Where you drink beer out your shoe and put it back on.
Yeah, no, I've seen that. I didn't know. I mean, now you said, it makes sense. It's called a shoey. But
yeah, bloody shoey.
There's a UFC fighter called Tui Tuivasa. And whenever he wins a UFC match, while he's still in the octagon, he gets a shoe and fills it with beer and goes like that, like in the octagon.
Is he Australian?
I know he's I assume so. He's either Australian or New Zealander.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I guess it would be similar, but like yeah, and I think that's like a sort of like symbol of like how relaxed you are. Like I can even take my shoe off and drink beer out of it and put it back on. Yeah. Whereas and I think that's sort of similar here, but I think we're a little bit more fussy and fastidious. We expect people to have manners and we expect hierarchies to be respected. They don't have that. They've completely kind of got rid of those structures and everything is just chill. But obviously both of those things are very different to America, where you're supposed to be you're supposed to actually like yourself.
As if that's like so audacious. How dare you like yourself? Yeah. Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, yeah. That whole self-deprecation thing. I've been thinking about it while we've been chatting about other stuff. I think that I don't think that a Greek person would get offended by us saying topical. I genuinely don't. I feel like it would be like if I heard like a Greek person jokingly try and think of a stereotypical English person, called them like Herbert Humperdinck or something. I would just think that was really funny, wouldn't you? I'd be like, yeah, that's pretty funny. Like, yeah, exactly. And I guess I know that there's some controversy about there's like some old Olympic stones or something that we have, and the Greeks aren't particularly happy about that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I can't remember what it's called, but I know what you're talking about.
I can't remember if it's like their like
museum.
It's like from the original Olympics or something, like some artifacts like that, or if it's from Mount Olympus. It's something to do with either the Olympics or Olympus. Yeah. But on the whole, I think the Brits and the Greeks have always historically had a very good relationship. Apart from that, I mean, and I even like, because I really like Greece. When I went to Crete in 2019, and one of the things I like about the Greeks is very similar. It's like one of the things I like about the Italians as well. They are just like like very open about their opinions. Like they won't mince their words.
Yeah.
And I thought it was quite funny. And I don't want to like start any like global tensions by saying this, but they basically openly said to me, because where I was in Crete, there were lots of American tourists, because after the Second World War, Americans had a lot of Air Force bases in Greece. But the Greeks like that, because obviously it's like a deterrent for them. Like, you know, if it's nobody's going to mess with Greece if there's American Air Force bases there.
Yeah.
So the Greeks quite liked the fact that Americans had Air Force bases there. And obviously, as well, the British and Greeks were allies during World War II. Obviously, the Greeks were the only other country in Europe, apart from Britain, that never actually surrendered to the Nazis. And quite openly, the Greek locals would tell me, because there was this little village that was like about a half-mile walk from the hotel that we were staying. So we'd walk down there like every day and we'd chat to the locals and that. Really nice people. They would just openly say that they liked the British and the American tourists, but they didn't like the French and the German tourists, which I thought was really funny. Well, I thought was like really funny.
Yeah, that's the opposite to what people usually say. Usually people don't like the British and American tourists.
Yeah,
Especially the Spanish.
Yeah,
They hate us over
but
there.
I think again though, it really depends. Like if you. Obviously, you're really into history. Like, if you know sort of history, like you can see why our relations would be much better with the Greeks than they would be with, say, the Spanish, because historically the Spanish have always been the British's foes. You know? I mean, they literally sent like massive armadas to try and defeat us during Elizabeth I's reign, and then just luckily like this massive storm came and like sank more than half their ships, and then so they just basically turned around and went back. But if it wasn't for that, there was just going to be this massive Spanish invasion. There's always been a lot of tensions between Spain and England, and even during the Napoleonic Wars. Not obviously, it was very divided, but there was a lot of Spanish people that sided with Napoleon. So that while a lot of the battles happened in Spain,
Right.
So British soldiers would have had to have fought a lot of Spaniards. So there's probably basically a lot of British people have killed a lot of Spaniards, and a lot of Spaniards have killed a lot of British people. And after like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years of that, it does form a little bit of like a weird tension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think even during the Second World War, even though they were like technically neutral, they used to let like Nazi submarines and like ships like dock in Spain, and like refuel before they then go back out into the Atlantic to like sink British and American ships. So it's a bit like, and it's well known as well that Franco, who was the head of Spain during the Second World War, he was like pretty much like pals with Hitler.
Oh, really?
Like
I've actually never really thought about what Spain did in World War II.
Yeah.
Maybe that's ignorant. But
They were one of those countries that they were like technically neutral, but they weren't neutral in the way that like Switzerland or Sweden were. Like they were legit neutral. They were like, yeah, we're neutral, but your mum. But Hitler, fist bump. You know, like they didn't. As far as I'm aware, they didn't let like allies restock. You know, they wouldn't have let like ally ships refuel in Spanish harbours, but they did with the Nazis. And I think there's even rumours, isn't there, that Nazi officials like fled. Towards the end of the Second World War, when it became obvious that Germany were going to lose, some of the high-ranking Nazis fled to the west coast of Spain, and then from there got on submarines that then took them to Argentina, and they basically they hid basically in Argentina, basically until the day they died. And we were talking about this quite recently actually as well. Apparently, there's little like towns and villages in Argentina out in the middle of nowhere. We just go there and they all speak German. Not Spanish, like most Argentinians, obviously.
They've all fully got like German last names and everything as well.
And they've got like old pictures of like their granddads in like SS uniforms, like SS Nazi uniforms and that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
mental.
surprised. When I was, because one of my jobs over in Sydney was teaching English, and it was mostly to South Americans. Whenever you got Argentinians, like, and you'd sort of talk about, where they were from, where their name was from, or whatever, there'd always be some kind of German heritage.
Wow.
I'd stop digging at that point.
Yeah. Granddad Klaus. Yeah, that's mad. Isn't it? It's like not you like on paper. It's not what you'd expect.
Yeah,
but I think as well, I mean, that's another country that probably for sure won't think very fondly, and have good relations with the Brits, because obviously we had the whole Falklands War. Yeah. So the Argentinians almost definitely. I mean, the thing is as well, I think obviously you should take everyone as an individual. Yeah. So I'd like I wouldn't ever just like judge somebody. I wouldn't be like, oh, I've just met this person. I was getting on with them, but then I found out that they were from insert whatever country. Yeah. Now I instantly don't like them. Do you know what I mean? You've got to judge everyone as an individual, but I still think that as humans, you do have that natural stigma, don't you? Like, like in general, like Argentinians probably are not going to think as fondly of British people, and Spanish people aren't going to think as fondly of British people as certain other nations on the planet. Yeah,
I mean, it's funny. Like when I was doing that job, the thing I really realised quite quickly is that most people know nothing and care nothing about the UK.
Yeah,
like we're
sure.
so provincial and parochial to most of the people in the world. Like you'll ask them, like, you talk about things like travel plans, because that, the lesson might be on like travel vocabulary.
Yeah.
And you'd ask them where they want to travel, and they'd always say they want to go to France and to Spain and Italy. I don't think anyone ever said they wanted to go to England.
Really?
Yeah, nobody's really interested. Like, all they know about us is like Harry Potter and Rain.
Harry Potter and Rain. I mean, they're not far off.
Yeah.
Chuck in like Stonehenge and Tolkien, you're done.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
Like even Australians really like don't know too much about us. They'll know
Really?
about like Premier. Yeah, a lot of it. Obviously, that's not like a blanket truth. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah, sure.
But like younger, maybe Zoomer Australians
Yeah,
that I
yeah.
work with. You talk to them.
Sorry, what does Zoomer mean?
Gen Z, like Nathaniel over there.
Oh, yeah, like, yeah.
Yeah, like younger.
Right.
And
Quite a
like,
lot go over here in return, don't they? You get a lot of people
Yeah.
here going to working holiday visas in Australia, and I think quite a few people come over from Australia to like London and places like that as well.
Pretty much just London, yeah.
Yeah.
Most that you talk to, they'll say that they've been to the UK, and then you say, "Oh, where'd you go?"
Yeah.
London. Oh, I went to London.
Yeah, whereas I think obviously for us that grew up in the UK, when you hear somebody like a foreigner say like, "Oh, they've been to the UK," and you go, "Oh, where?" and they say London, it's like you think, well, you have absolutely no idea of my lifestyle.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because
yeah.
it's weird for us going to London, isn't it? 'Cause
It may as well be its own country.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what I always
yeah.
give quite a diplomatic answer, because I don't want to crap on their kind of holiday. So I'll
Yeah.
say like, "Oh, London's awesome, but it probably doesn't represent all of the UK."
No, definitely
Any
not,
less
no.
than I'd expect to go to Manhattan and say that I'd seen America.
Yeah, exactly.
A
When
bit
it's like
of America.
it's
but-
not like going to Colorado or
Yeah.
or Montana
Yeah.
or Texas. It's like it's completely different, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like even when I was coming back this time, and we were going down to Cornwall, and nobody knows what Cornwall is. They don't even know what the West Country is. Like when I say where I'm from, I used to say Bristol until I realised nobody knows that. So then what I kind of do now is I'll hold my hand up and then say, where my thumb is. Oh, that's the West.
Yeah.
This side's London, about 3 hours. And then they're
That's a pretty good way of doing it. To be fair.
yeah, it always works. And then they're like, "Oh, crikey!" But like, I've actually never heard anyone
Crikey,
say that.
mate! Oh, crikey! Yeah.
But then, yeah, so I was saying going down to Cornwall, and nobody knows what that is, so I got up pictures to show them, and like the people that I had this conversation with, they couldn't believe that we had like beaches and like blue water and
Really?
like sand and stuff. Yeah, because their idea is like, I don't know, rainy
Just
cobbled
a
streets.
muddy field.
Yeah, a muddy field, or
Like
like
a
Jack
co-
the Ripper. That's
Yeah, full on. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. It's funny. Isn't it? I think like it seems to me that like the country that by far is most interested in England, which is obviously ironic in a way because they're the ones that are so proud that they fought for their own independence, is America.
Yeah.
Like Americans almost have like a bit of a like a lob on, don't they? It seems like, doesn't it? Like, they speak about the UK very romantically almost. It's like, and you a lot of American tourists in the UK, aren't there? Like,
especially Scotland.
yeah. Yeah, when I went to Winchester a couple of months ago, obviously, well, if you can be a tourist in your own country, but yeah, I guess like as a tourist from Somerset,
like 45 minutes from your
yeah,
house.
I was going to say it's like Hampshire, which is like one of the next counties over, like east from here. But yeah, I went to like Winchester Cathedral, and like half the people in there were Yanks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really nice people that I always find, very friendly.
Yeah.
They tend to be very very you know what I mean? They're like just really nice, like almost like middle-aged ladies coming up to me and like talking to like me and Evie and being like, "Do you know that this cathedral was?" And I could tell that she was taking a lot of pride in like knowing a little bit about the history of it and stuff.
Yeah.
I think they really romanticise the UK. As I said, it's quite funny and it's very ironic because they're all like, USA, and like every July 4th, there's like massive celebrations with like nationwide fireworks and all this stuff. And they're like, almost take real pride in that, but at the same time, they almost seem to be the country that loves the UK. Like, it's like, for example, they always say, don't they, whenever there's like a royal wedding or anything like that, in America, they like make a bigger deal out of it than we do. It's like
really?
all over American news, and they like love it. They have like parties in America and stuff. And don't get me wrong, we do to a certain extent in the UK, but I think it's that self-deprecating thing a little bit in the UK. Like, we don't really like to make a big deal out of anything.
Yeah, I think
So
a
it's
lot of
like-
people are quite cynical about the royal family as well, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. So it's like more like the sort of thing that like your nan or something might have on the telly. If you pop round her house, do you know what I mean? If there's like a royal wedding or like a royal's passed away, like. But for the most part, people, although you're going to see it on the front of newspapers and it's going to be in the news, you're just sort of getting on with your life, aren't you? Like,
yeah, and that's what I found sort of being in Australia. Like, people would ask me, because what's happened, I mean, since I left there, like, the Queen died, obviously the King was coronated, like, different things have happened. And people will ask me about it, and I know less than them most of the time.
Really?
Yeah, because like we don't really tend to take too much of an interest, I don't think.
No.
Like, I do find monarchy interesting 1,000 years ago.
Yes.
Not now, I don't care now.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty much in the same category. Like, I think it's or at least I don't know. I don't know if it's changing now. I think it's almost like outliving. I don't know. I don't want to make a statement that's too like absolutist, but I think it might be changing a little bit. I think especially during Queen Elizabeth II's reign, though, I think that because she was obviously a very good monarch, and I think that the royal family traditionally bring in a lot of tourism because people they want to come see Buckingham Palace, you know, and as a result, that's obviously like flooding our economy because if there are people that, you know, for example, say like, I don't know, a family is saying, where should we go on holiday this year? Maybe we should go to the UK. And maybe the thing that tips them over the edge of like, you know, they're debating between going to Rome and London, but just they're so fascinated in the royal family that they're going to pick the UK because of the royal family. Then like, that's obviously then, you know, they're buying in UK restaurants and, you know, and stuff. And that's obviously really, really good for our economy. So I think the royal family does obviously flood our economy a lot. I guess obviously the argument to that would be obviously that they're super, super rich. But I obviously don't know the figures. I imagine we get more money from, say, tourism of people wanting to come here to say things like Buckingham Palace than even how rich they are. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I don't know anything about the figures. I think it's probably a good thing because the thing that people get a bit annoyed about is when they make a massive spectacle of themselves.
Yes.
But that's what brings the tourists in, I suppose. I mean, when the coronation happened, I did watch like a YouTube clip of it.
Yeah,
and me
too, pretty much. I think I had it like on the background at home while I was just doing stuff.
Yeah, exactly, just to see what it looked like, and like you know, watching it from Sydney, it did seem a little bit bizarre. But also, like, the king was like swearing on like holy swords and like ancient gems and stuff.
It's pretty
like
cool.
Yeah,
I think it ties into what you were saying at the start of the show with what you miss about England.
Yeah.
It's the history that we've got here that other countries don't have, and I think that's why it's so important to keep, is because it gives us an identity as people.
Yeah.
Like, even though
fully.
it's not got the same resonance and importance that it did back in the day, it still gives us that identity as a tribe.
I think that's what a lot of newer countries don't have as well. And I think, funnily enough, you know, I was saying about how, you know, speaking to the Greek locals when I was in Crete back like 6 years ago, one of the things I thought was actually really nice, and I had a real like sort of like bonding. I felt like I know it sounds super cheesy. I felt like I had quite like a bit of a bonding experience with this sort of like middle-aged Greek lady, who was like basically telling me, she was like saying to me that she feels like there's like a little bit of like a mutual respect between the Greek and the British, and I was like, yeah, cool. Like, but like, you know, like I'm not disagreeing with you, but like expand on why you think that. And she said, "Oh, right. Well, we both come from cultures with like a fascinating history. We both have come from countries that, like, at some point in history, were like at the forefront of like the entire world. Like, well, like, you know, whether it was like 3,000 years ago, whether it was like the fact that the Greeks essentially invented democracy." You know, and diplomacy, or like had like the greatest warriors in Sparta and stuff. Like, it's just freaking cool, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's so freaking cool. Like, and then, you know, obviously with the, you know, we've got such a fascinating history. We're sort of like mongrels in a way, aren't we? But we had obviously ancient Britons and like Celts and Gaels originally and stuff like that, and then you had the influx of the Romans, and that had a big impact obviously on our society in lots and lots of ways. And then obviously they had to sort of like withdraw, but forever afterwards, obviously Britain to this day is hugely impacted by the Romans. But then you obviously had the Angles and the Saxons and the Jutes that came in. So then we had all this sort of like Germanic influx of like Germanic pagans, which then, you know, then eventually converted to like Christianity, because of the Roman impact that was still left over, you know, those connections to Rome and stuff like that. And then obviously then you had the Viking invasions in the northeast, which then left its mark. So we're sort of like these mongrels of these really interesting civilizations. And then obviously eventually it led to the British Empire. and us being sort of at the forefront of the world in that way. Do you know what I mean? Like to this day, and I think Chinese people actually are like really, really open about it, which I think is quite cool. Because I think, especially nowadays, like, everyone's like really worried about China and stuff like that. But one thing that I think is quite cool is, and it's hilarious because obviously they're actually way, way better at it than us nowadays, but they like credit us for like bringing trains to their countries.
Right.
Because obviously we were almost like originally known, we're like everywhere we'd go, we'd just start building railroad like networks and stuff. And obviously once you had those networks back in those days, things could just get around like so quickly.
Yeah. And
like in India and in China, everything built all those railways. And then ironically, like China now are like the best country probably for trains in the world. And they've got all those bullet trains and their trains actually arrive on time, like all that stuff. But they're still to this day, like, we took that and just sort of improved upon it. But like, it was pretty cool that the Brits gave that to us, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which is so yeah, it was like a nice little bonding experience anyway with that Greek lady.
Yeah.
It was almost, I felt like it was a very mutually respectful thing. Like I was there as a guest in her country, and I was like, it was really nice hearing her say that, and then me almost being very respectful back. Like, well, yeah, obviously I think that like Greek history is one of the most fascinating histories on the planet. The fact that you can like walk around these old like pantheons and stuff like that with these ancient temples that were like. People were like debating science and philosophy back when people in like Britain were like hurling mud at each other. Like it's like amazing.
Yeah.
I think it's quite funny how like we all naturally draw to each other, like our own people. Like even on holiday, like we all go to Spain as English people. You go to certain places in Europe and it will be from different countries. Maybe the Germans will go somewhere. I've been to Iceland where it's all like Chinese people just all flock to Iceland for some reason.
I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
But they always seem to be together. You were talking earlier about the Lebanese people in Australia and the Greek in their own little area. Even in China, we were talking at the start of the show or before the start of the show about how all the dwarves or the little people have come together in China and made their own little village.
I love that.
It's quite an interesting thing though, isn't it? That as people, we all just naturally congregate. And it seems like even the people that we're not, intrinsically linked with, that being English and Greek or British and Greek, we still try and find a way to get connected and sort of make our own little tribe between each other. It's quite interesting.
Don't you think it's weird in a way, just like you saying about like, because it seems almost like the country of choice, doesn't it? Like the number one tourist destination, Spain. But considering what we were saying earlier on, it's a bit weird, don't you think?
Is it just because that was like when planes became, commercially available for most people? That was just the cheapest sunny place to get to.
It probably is, but but then that sort of begs the question. Like, I wonder, like, why? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, why? Why is it? It's probably much more simpler than I'm thinking. It's probably just geographically the closest place that is that's hottest. Like, Italy's like 3.5 hours on a plane. 3.5 hours, is it? Or maybe it's like 2.5 to 3 hours. Whereas you can probably get to Spain in like 1.5 to 2 hours. So maybe it's literally just. It's the closest really hot country. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
But then the south of France is nice, isn't it? But that's not traditionally such a place.
No.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
I guess there's a thin line, isn't there, between, say, like the south of France, geographically, obviously, and, say, like the north of Spain or Italy.
Yeah.
Maybe there were sort of areas as well that we could make our own. Like you go to a place like Benidorm or something like that. It's essentially just England in a hot place.
They must hate that, surely.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They must be like that as a no-go area.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I wonder if there was much there before we went, or if we sort of built that up.
Who knows?
In Spain?
In like places like
the entirety of Spain.
Yeah.
Just like Benidorm, you mean?
Places like Benidorm and
Bellendorm. Places like Bellendorm. I mean, it might as well be.
That sounds like from Lord of the Rings. Bellendorm.
Bellendorm. I'm an elf from Bellendorm. I feel like out of all the nice places to go in the world, like if you do choose Benidorm, you might as well be going to Bellendorm. You know what I mean?
Like, when I went to Crete, I didn't know, because I went thinking all of the same stuff, right? I wanted to go to like Mount Ida and Heracleum or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah.
All of that stuff.
Yeah, Heracleum.
Yeah, something like knowing that it was a
or is
place
it Heraklion? Is it Heraklion?
Probably. Yeah. I don't want to generalise any more Greek words.
After Popolopoulos or whatever it was.
Yeah, that was a stab in the dark. I don't want to do any more stabbing. I went there for that kind of cultural experience and booked like an all-inclusive in Malia, not knowing what it is Malia, isn't it, in Crete, not knowing that was like a Benidorm type place.
I didn't know.
It's like a little town there that is essentially just like British 20-year-olds.
Is it really?
Completely wasted.
I didn't even know that existed.
Zakynthos is like that as well. Or Zante.
Right.
I've
Pretty
heard
much the same
I've
in
heard of
Greece.
Zakynthos. It's like it's like the party.
It's literally
place,
just a bit of like a Benidorm sort
Isn't
of
it
place.
like it's like an island, isn't it? It's like a party island essentially.
It's
Like,
a
Well, I'm pretty sure Malia was where they actually filmed In Between Us 1, like
Is
that
it?
movie.
Yeah.
although it's
Oh, right.
not
Yeah, I
set
think it
there.
is, yeah.
I think because it was just like a generic Brits Abroad broad party place,
Right.
they filmed it like on that street. So this like cultural Greek myth philosophical holiday that I thought I was getting, it didn't really turn out that way when it was
Yeah.
just like people offering me like €1 shots. But then once you get out of Malia, like then it's like super nice.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
see
sure.
all of the, we went to like a monastery up on a mountain and you know, all of that stuff. I think like that thing of it's surprising that woman looked at it that way, because I know that we've always had that, like the mythical origin of the British people is from Greece, like in like what's it, Geoffrey of Monmouth, The History of Kings of Britain, like is it Brutus? It's like a mythical Greek warrior that was meant to have like fled Athens and come and founded Britain, I think.
Mate, do you know what? I don't think I've actually ever heard that.
Yeah, I mean it's obviously not true.
Yeah, sure, but it's like a cool fable. Like.
Yeah, and it says a lot about our society that, like, all through, like, the sort of medieval period and early modern period, we wanted, like, we made up this story that we were essentially Greeks.
Yeah.
Well, I think you could argue like what makes the West, but I think most people can agree that the Greeks are like one of the key things that make the West the West.
Yeah.
Like the history of the Greeks. Like we've almost like all of our civilizations now, whether it's France, the UK, Italy, America, Australia, Canada. Like it's almost like one of the cornerstones of it is that whole Greek society. They started, as I said, that democracy, diplomacy. Obviously they started the whole, philosophy, which is, obviously very, very popular and important to sort of most Western countries. Whether it's just things like, science, whether it's astronomy, astrology, surgery, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They were almost like they started all.
Yeah,
They
well,
started it all.
even like, I mean, I think it's fair to say that like a lot of what forms the West is Christianity.
Yes.
Like morally and stuff. And even Christianity doesn't really, obviously it has a lot of roots in the Middle East, being, Jesus being one of the main strands, but then the actual kind of philosophy of it comes from Platonism and Neoplatonism. So even that is kind of just Greek philosophy wrapped up in like a sort of Jewish mystical cult.
100%. Yeah. It's really cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Were you going to say something else, though? Because you said that you were a little bit surprised that the Greek lady I was speaking to had that view.
But not surprised is probably the wrong word. Interested,
Yeah.
because obviously we look at it that way from our side.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that they would have like
Yeah.
seen a
Reciprocated.
mutual
Maybe
respect
she was just
there,
saying
yeah.
it to my face because she thought that's what I'd want to hear.
Maybe she was like, was she like serving you in a restaurant, or was it?
No.
Oh right, I didn't know.
No.
Like...
I was. Do you know what? I can't remember exactly what she was doing or like why I was chatting to her. If you know what I mean.
Right.
I just remember I was like chatting to her almost like there was like this lovely, charming little. I don't know if it's technically a town or a village, but I want to call it more like a town. It was like the size of it. It wasn't even like the size of like, it wasn't like half the size of Durley, this little place, but it did have like shops and restaurants. So it was like quite a cool place. And actually in the centre of it, there was this really old tree. Can't remember what type of tree it was now. But it was like this really, really ancient tree they had. And it wasn't that tall, but it was like really fat. It was really girthy. And they'd sort of like decorated it, with like the evil eyes and stuff. So like hanging off the branches, there were those cool Greek evil eyes. And it was just this, and I think I was like next to that, just chatting to her, and I can't even remember why we got into the conversation. To be honest.
feel like I went there. That sounds really familiar. I think I did like.
It's by the Isle of Tears.
Maybe.
Do you know about the Isle of Tears?
I can't really remember. We had like a tour. Well, funnily enough, I probably had a similar experience with this guy called George, who was like a tour guide who drove us around.
George
the
Popolopoulos.
Island. George Popolopoulos. That was the one. Yeah.
Mr. Popolopoulos' son. Yeah.
But he was a funny guy because he, like, over the course of the trip, I got talking to him more and asking him about, like, Dionysus and stuff.
Nice.
And once he realised I was interested, he sort of took a liking to me. So we talked more over the course of the trip to the point where I was, like, sat up front in his van with everybody else in the back because he wanted to tell me directly about, like, Greece and that. And then somehow the conversation moved on to how much he loved heavy metal.
Nice.
And specifically Dio.
Nice.
And then he ended up singing a whole Dio song to me in the front of a van.
Hey, I love that. Like, didn't even put it on, just sang it to you. Just a cappella.
I think he just sung it. Yeah, I mean, it was
Gave you an a cappella
it was
rendition.
Actually, what's like the biggest Black Sabbath Dio song? I can't remember what it's
Heaven
called.
and Hell?
Heaven and Hell.
Yeah.
He
Mate,
sang the whole of Heaven and Hell
legendary.
to my face. Yeah, while driving me around.
Heaven and hell. Just like this, I imagine it with like a Greek accent.
Yeah, because the whole time I just had to be like, yeah, man, yeah,
Man,
yeah,
killing
like,
it.
thinking that he
Yes.
was going to stop. Yeah. But it was, I mean, it was an experience. I suppose.
Mate, he knew his, to be fair, he knew his stuff. If he could just knock that out.
Yeah, well, he said that he knew like a metal bar somewhere in Crete, and he kept texting me afterwards to go out like drinking with him.
Man, there's actually some really
I
good.
should have done it. I
Mate,
didn't do it.
You should have done it. There's actually a lot of good Greek bands coming out nowadays.
No, really?
Yeah, there's like several I've gotten into in the last couple of years. There's this really good grunge Greek band who are called Morphing Jar. They're like quite like a heavy grunge band that are out. I'm just trying to think now. There's a band I literally played them. I actually played them like yesterday. I'm struggling to think of the name of them now. You might have heard them, Drew, because it was one of the tracks I asked to get in for you. Do you remember there was I asked you to get in some tracks, Drew, and there were two songs from the same artist. Does that ring a bell, Drew? They sounded almost like a lot like Gojira. They were a bit Gojira-y. Basically, it's like a prog metal band from Greece. Anyway, I'll think of the name for them afterwards, Jake, if you want to check them out.
Yeah.
But and then there's this other very almost esoteric sort of sounding, sort of like proggy Greek band, which annoyingly I also can't think of the name of right now. But I'll find out once the show's over, and I'll let you know. Yeah, that's it, mate. Aria, isn't it like Oria? Is it? Yeah, that's the one that sounds a bit like Gojira.
Oh, okay.
They're really good. And and I'll find the other one as well. The one that's a bit more like sounds a bit more esoteric sounding, I guess. Just like almost, you know, sometimes like you just listen to something that's got that real like mystical, like almost like esoteric sound. It's like very unique. It's like still quite like proggy metal-y, but like one of those bands where every track is like 6+ minute long.
Right.
But quite cool, you know, it would take you on a journey, and every one of their tracks is called like Age of Aquarius or something like that. But really cool.
Yeah, I
really
don't
cool.
think I know any Greek music. The only band I'm trying to remember, because there is some Greek black metal. I don't know. Is Rotting Christ, are they a Greek band?
I'm not sure, mate. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
there's definitely some Greek black metal, which is like a weird. You wouldn't think of that being a place where much black metal comes from, with it being all about like frozen forests and stuff.
Yeah. I know, yeah, definitely with that. There's a really cool Greek folk band that I like called Daemonian Nymphae, and they all play like traditional Greek folk music on like folk instruments, because obviously the Greeks actually have like I think usually when people think of folk music, they usually think of like Ireland and Scotland and England, don't they? You know, because that's where like most of the famous folk tracks are from. But obviously Greece has a massive history of like traditional instruments. They have like Greek bagpipes essentially. I can't remember what they're called. Do you remember, Drew? But essentially, like everyone thinks of bagpipes and they think of Scotland, but actually a long time before the Scots essentially invented bagpipes, the Greeks had essentially their version of it, and then it pretty much looks the same. It's like a bag or a sack, whatever you want to call it, with what would you even describe it as, like reeds or whatever that come out of it with holes in, essentially, you know, like and they sound very much like they sound a little bit different, but essentially the same as Scottish bagpipes. And and obviously like lyres, lyres and lots of other like cool, you know, and that's all of Daemonian Nymphae's music.
Yeah.
Just uses those traditional instruments.
I guess a lot
It's
of our
very
like
cool.
medieval instruments came from there, I suppose, didn't they? Like harps and lyres and stuff like that.
Man.
So I guess it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's cool, like their tracks are very cool, and they've all got like they tend to have like a little bit of like a dark edge, you know. It's like fairly dark Greek folk music, but it's very cool.
Yeah, I need
Very
things
cool.
to have a dark edge to find them interesting.
Me too.
If something doesn't have any edge, then I don't like it.
Yeah, I tend to think that as well. And I remember actually, I thought it was quite cool because I've always sort of felt like that. And I remember thinking it was cool hearing it from someone like him. I remember a year or two ago, I saw Bill Bailey put up a post on Instagram, and obviously he's like a massive music fan and an amazing musician, isn't he, as well? And he was saying in the post that, you know, while obviously there is very much a time and a place for like, like very happy major sounding music. He said that in his opinion, all the great works of art musically are in like basically in minor key.
Yeah.
And he was saying that there's just like it's hard for something to resonate with you on that really deep level unless it's got some sort of feeling of darkness or sorrow to it.
Yeah.
Don't really know why.
No, I know what you mean. Like,
You know?
even I'm not a big like pop music fan, but even pop music that I like tends to, when you listen a bit more carefully, have like a sort of dark subtext to it.
Yeah.
Rather than just being like straight up joyful. Because I don't know what it says about me, but I find that a bit boring if things are joyful.
Mate, I agree with you, and I think use a band that I know that we both like as a good example. So like take like a band like Queen, who one of the cool things about Queen is that they have so many different sounding songs and different eras of music. But take something like Crazy Little Thing Called Love, which is like, don't get me wrong, it's a happy, nice little song, but that like, like, yeah, it's quite like a fun song, but like compare that to something like The Show Must Go On.
Yeah.
Or what's that one that always makes you sad? Who Wants to Live Forever?
Oh yeah,
mate. Like compare The Show Must Go On,
bleak,
mate.
Song.
Yeah, but The Show Must Go On and Who Wants to Live Forever, mate. Mate, you listen to that, hairs on end, like goosebumps.
Yeah.
Like, mate, I feel like every time I listen to that, if I'm in my car on my own, like crank that right up.
Yeah.
Mate, I'm like having a full-on experience just driving to the shops, mate.
But
even
like with like, I don't know, maybe not so much Crazy Little Thing Called Love, although I love that song, but like, I don't know, a band like Motorhead might be a better example of what I'm about to say, where there's nothing particularly dark in the songs, but because it's got a rebellious vibe about it. Rebellion's like dark in a sense, isn't it? It's kind of left-hand pathy, it's individualist. And I think that has like, that's why that is attractive as well, because it's sort of dark in a sense. Not dark in like a morbid sense, but dark in like a...
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying, yeah. It's like that just that feeling of maybe like non-conformist, like rebellion, like you need to have...
Chaos.
Yeah. Chaos warriors. Yeah.
I remember reading once that it was some sort of medical like term that like a percentage of people have, and it's essentially what you just described of getting hairs on end and really connecting to like a deeper, darker type of music that not everyone can actually do. It's only a like percentage of people, which would also make sense as to why there's such an audience for major songs, songs in higher keys and happier music, because maybe people can easier connect to that if they don't have this like medical thing that a lot of people do.
If they're not disabled.
Yeah.
That
Mentally
puts it on its head. I thought people
disabled.
just like that music because most people are thick.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably that too.
Maybe that's why they've got the medical thing.
Almost like a shallowness, it seems like, doesn't it? But
Yeah.
it sounds like, without trying to sound almost like too judgy.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound pretentious to say, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I think
but at the
like,
same time, probably true.
Yeah.
To be honest. I mean, if something's true, it's true, I think, It's
well,
like...
if you've not got much depth about you emotionally, then you're not going to look for emotionally deep things, I suppose. And I'm not positing myself as emotionally deep there.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, in general, there's got to be a correlation.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think sometimes as well, because like you tend to be the company you keep. So I think, I think most of us are fortunate that we're surrounded by, generally intelligent people. But we forget sometimes, and don't get me wrong, I don't want to sound like I'm like I don't want to sound like I'm like ragging on anyone, but where we work, there's some people that work next door to us, and there's sometimes they vape basically outside this window. And I was
stood out there now.
Mate, they can listen, I don't care, right? And I was telling Bullwinkle the other week, when you almost like get into like a little glimpse into someone's life, and you think, man, that is like that's almost like fascinating to me. And they're up there and they're like, well, I got a question for you. Got a question for you, right? And it's like, right, when was it? What was it they said?
It was like 100 BC or something like that, right?
How long ago was 100 BC? And then there was, I think there was about 3 or 4 of them out there from what I could gather from being sat in here. And I was just like, listening to it while I was getting on my work. And I was thinking, like, that's not very hard, really, is it? You know what I mean? Like, and then one of them, it was like, there was almost like a weird silence. And one of them was like, honestly, though, like, how would you expect me to know that if I hadn't, like, specifically looked that up? And then one of them just went, and then another one of them went, I do know that BC means before Christ. And I was thinking, well, you're sort of halfway there then by that point, aren't you? Because, like, if all you need to know is that it's 2025.
Yeah.
Right. So if AD started 2025 years ago, just add 100 years to that.
Would you lean out the window and tell them, or would you just let them?
No, but my
I wouldn't
point
want
was
it
it goes hand in hand with what you were saying, almost about like shallow music, which
Yeah,
almost like has
yeah.
it's almost like it's so complicated. It's so like it's so like the opposite of having depth. Yeah. Well, yeah, shallow.
Yeah.
It's like it's just
I
like
remember
shallow. Like,
where I lived up north, like before moving to Somerset, and I would have moved when I was 11. So the people I knew before I was 11, basically, I remember about like 4 years into school, like when we were in Haygrove, I got in touch again with one of my friends, or it was like my best friend, like from up north. And I remember I was like really into like Pandora and stuff at the time, and just like metal music and that. And like I just started talking. It was when MSN was the thing, you know. And I was chatting to him
back
on
in the
MSN.
day.
And
Back in
like
the
I
golden
sent
days.
him like Cemetery Gates. I remember, and like for me that's like an epic song. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
it's just like got some emotion with it. Like that solo.
Yeah, as
is
you said,
just
it's got some
killer
depth.
in it as well, and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Like, with like pinch harmonics and that. So it's just like it was cool. I was thinking, oh, this person that's thinking that's so cool. And then literally he just ripped back like, oh my god, mate, I want to slip my wrists. And I was like, what a reaction, you know? Like,
Yeah.
and it just showed us that we'd gone down different paths almost.
isn't it funny to think, Drew, that you might have turned out like that if you just stayed in Hartlepool?
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
when I first met Drew, he was very much just like just loved Subarus and
Right.
like what even music were you listening to at the time, man? Were you really listening to it? Oh no, I remember you saying that you quite like Slipknot and stuff.
Yeah,
I feel like everyone
I
did in
remember
2001.
when I lived there, it was when Napster first came out, and it was
Right.
like it was anything from like like gangster rap to like I remember I had like Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park, like Hybrid Theory had like come out, so like I loved them, like so it was more like rocky but with like rap elements, and then like
But for,
Dr.
but I
Dre
guess
and stuff.
when you moved down to Somerset, it was more like
Yeah,
it's
got
funny
into
how
the
like
rock stuff.
things can take different trajectories, can't it? Like for you, that then led you more like that was your gateway to heavier music, which then led eventually to things like Metallica, Megadeth, Pantera, and stuff like that. Whereas
Yeah.
I guess
And
it
all
could
the
easily
insane
not take
like
that trajectory, and
guitar
then maybe
stuff.
you just maybe you just might more like the rappy DJ element of it.
Yeah,
and
I
then just-
remember
as soon as
I-
the new metal phase is over, you're just not listening to heavier stuff anymore.
I remember being at this guy's house like when we must have been like 10 or something, or like 9 or 10, and watching like the MTV Awards where it was like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre, like, and there was like they do this skit where they were inside like a convenience store, and they were like holding it up, and then they shoot someone and stuff, and it was like, and I remember we like we were just like loving it at the time, you know. It was more like
yeah.
the theatrical thing.
I want to do that. Yeah, I want to do that.
This is so cool.
It's weird how that was. I'd kind of forgotten that phrase, the slit your wrist music, because that was quite
Yeah.
prominent back then, like
It
what
was,
Drew
yeah.
just said. And I can remember that was like the kind of binary that doesn't exist anymore now that everything's kind of like amorphously, you know, glued together on the internet.
Yes, yeah.
Like back then, 20 years ago, you either listened to, like, you were either a chav or an emo, essentially, weren't you? And emo could mean that you listened to, like, AC/DC and Iron Maiden.
Yeah, or at least, and I think that was an annoying thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
if you
because-
were into stuff, because like
And I
you
felt we
definitely
got into it before emos were even a thing. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say-
emos happened like afterwards.
I didn't even hear
My
the word
Chemical
emo
Romance
until I
and
was
all that
about 16. Like it's sort of, I reckon it entered the human vocabulary, at least where we lived, in about 2005, 2006.
That's exactly where I was just thinking,
Yeah.
2005, because that was when, like, My Chemical Romance, like, blew up.
Yeah, because I never really got
then
called
we
an
were
emo.
like, oh, God,
like
we're
chavs
gonna-
would shout at me to get get your hair cut in town, and you would hear like derogatory stuff. But I
looked
feel
different,
like
not quite emo.
yeah, and because we
Yeah.
weren't like really that fringy or anything like that, you know.
Oh, I did all that, but then I
Yeah.
was a few years younger,
Yeah,
so
of
I like
course.
loved emo, because that was like what would I have been when that came out, like 13 or something? So the age where you are like, oh yeah, I hate you, mum. Like, that kind of, you know, where
The rise where like My Chemical Romance were like really big.
yeah,
that sort of thing.
and I did get called an emo because I had the black side fringe and the
Yeah.
tunnels. I also got called a fat lesbian.
That was really funny. I did dye my hair black, but I did dye my hair black, and it was quite funny actually.
You had like
'cause,
long Phil Anselmo type black hair, didn't you?
I did cut an undercut in. By the time I cut my undercut in, my black hair had faded. So I dyed my hair black when I started growing it long, and then obviously it just stayed and it's real funny. I didn't ever actually like end up like cutting off the black hair. If you know what I mean, I think it just like slowly faded. But I do think that probably about like half of my hair was probably darker than obviously, the stuff closer to my roots. But yeah, and then I cut in an undercut because I thought Phil Anselmo looked badass, like Cowboys era Phil Anselmo. I just thought it looked badass, and obviously as well because I like pro wrestling, and I thought the Hardy Boys were badass.
Yeah.
I just thought, like, man, I want to give myself a Jeff Hardy / Phil Anselmo haircut, and then I'll be happy as Larry. You know,
and I think Jeff Hardy was like the coolest looking person in the 2000s.
Mate,
I think he still is regarded to be.
Yeah. Well, that the sort of the fashion now. I see it a lot around Sydney. I've not been to enough cities back here to see it.
Yeah.
But everybody seems to wear the black cargo jeans with the sort of white stitching.
They've
like
come back in, haven't they?
Yeah, like the tight, especially girls wearing like the net long sleeve net tops or whatever.
Whatever they're called,
it. Essentially Jeff Hardy.
Yeah.
Tunnels coming back in and stuff.
It's freaking cool, isn't it? Do you think you're like walking around like any moment you're like, oh my god, I'm going to get swanton bombed. These chicks are going to swanton bomb me.
But I guess going back to that kind of period, I guess that was the binary then. If you were and it's a little bit classist looking back at it, but if you were like the thick chavs, then you would have listened to, you know, Happy Hardcore and 50 Cent, and then
Hardcore man,
yeah, Hardcore Till I Die. That was the phrase, wasn't it? And then if you were maybe a little bit less dense, then you would have like been
I definitely think that, although this is a generalization, obviously, there was in general, I think people that were more into. Yeah, maybe like rock music and stuff. I expect in general probably had a higher IQ. Maybe we should say.
Well, I remember there were articles back then saying that. So like it was definitely like a kind of subtext to that divide that like, if you're a little bit smarter and a bit more emotionally intelligent, you're probably going to listen to music that is as well. Yeah,
I mean, I can remember even when we were sort of like, you know, year 9, I remember like me and Josh and Nicky C and Drew and stuff would have some like quite in-depth conversations. You know what I mean? Like we'd be trying to like already sort of trying to explore, like naturally explore things, you know, like deeper meanings of things. I guess like without trying to sound like all out there and like pretentious or anything, like trying to explore the universe a little bit, having these really naturally in-depth conversations. Whereas I can imagine if you were more in the happy hardcore crew, it'd just be like, we need to pikey some stuff off someone so we can buy some pills, you know?
It was like the Devo archetype.
Yeah. Has anyone got any poppers that we can do under the table in RE? You know, like that whole thing, you know?
Yeah. But then also, I suppose, like saying that, because it could sound like we're sort of making ourselves out to be the smart ones. I also don't like music that tries to be smart just for the sake of it.
100%. And also, I still wouldn't class us as like, I would not class us as the smart ones, but in my opinion, I would think of like the smart people in my year would have been like, you know, there's always that group of people and they very much care about their grades, and it's almost like if they don't get anything but straight A's, they're like, you know, the kind of like girls that like cry if they get a B, you know, because they've got like enough all A's but then one B, but then they've been striving all year to you know what I mean? And like to me that would be like crazy, or you know, like, and to be fair, I pretty much got on with everyone in school. So while we're obviously being very frank and brutally honest with our assessment of how things were socially back then, I did pretty much get on with everyone. You know, I at the end of the day, I don't care if you're a freaking chav, as long as you're not going to be like a bell to me or my mates. Do you know what I mean? I don't care. Like there were people, obviously I won't name names because I don't want to like put them into a category, but there were like some right hampies that I was mates with in school. But then again, there were some like, you know, kids of ridiculously rich people that had like £800,000 houses out, you know, somewhere in the Quantocks between Bridgewater and Taunton, that were like really, really smart, well-spoken like girls in our year that I got on with really well as well. And then I got on well with all the rugby lads because I played rugby. And then I got on well with like my silly music mates that I had, do you know what I mean? Like, who were obviously like all my best friends, all the weirdos, the weird, you know, like the weirdos of the year, you know, like Jake Harden and I mean like weirdos like affectionately, but do you know what I mean? Like all almost just like a bit different. You know, just a bit different, like wired maybe a bit different, like the outcasts of society. But I guess that's one of the things that leads you to things like rock music, metal, punk music, because that is almost like, it's like the home, isn't it? It's the home for the outcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Society.
Definitely once you're at the point where you're listening to like black metal, then you're one of the weirdos at that point. Like you don't get no normie is like a Dark Throne fan.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen. And you know, most of the music I listen to, I mostly listen to hardcore and hip hop. So it's not like I'm listening to Dream Theater.
Well, I think and I think I think also as you get older, you naturally just broaden your horizons and you just like more and more stuff, whether it's food or music or whatever, don't you? You start appreciating things more. But I do think though, like even not like black metal, I think like when you're saying like year 7 and year 8, a lot of people either aren't really that fussed about music, or like a lot of girls in our year around that period, they were listening to things like Usher and things like that.
Yeah.
Whereas I think if you're listening to things like Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that in those days that was still seen as like quite unique, and then anybody else in the year that randomly also was maybe a bit different and was like going home listening to Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah.
As soon as you'd find out that they liked it too, you'd be like almost like friends instantly.
Yeah,
like,
I must have got
you get it. It's like a you get it thing,
Yeah. Then you
get
get to you find out you both like Megadeth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I actually remember somebody when I was on the bus to school once. Saw that I was listening to Megadeth and called that Slit Your Wrist music, which is like a really weird
because it's really
think
not
of that as emo,
because it's really not. I mean, that definitely. I think because I think when you think of bands like Metallica, Megadeth, Pantera, they're like almost like the opposite of emo.
Party music, almost.
Yeah, and it's like
Party
like aggressive.
Yeah.
The whole thing is almost like it's like pull your pants up, stop whining. We're just here to get drunk and go nuts. That's what those like. Yeah, exactly. Actually, the opposite of slit your wrists. Yeah. Don't slit your wrists.
Stitch your wrists up.
I remember watching
put padding on.
Yeah. I watched a brutal interview with Dave Mustaine, and I'd say I can't help but love Dave Mustaine, even though he's a controversial figure.
Yeah.
And make what you will of this, but I'm not going to lie, I did think it was sort of hilarious. Even though I'm a real big grunge fan, and I used to love Nirvana when I was a kid, and I still do like them, even if they're not my favourite grunge band nowadays. But it was like an interview, and it was like it just so happened that Dave Mustaine was getting interviewed, and it turned out it was like the year anniversary of Kurt Cobain's death.
Right.
And it was some foreign interview. I think maybe it was Italy or something. And he was like, but it was like, it wasn't like an interview just like one on one, like behind the curtains or whatever. It was like out in a big room full of people. Like he was, and they were like, oh yeah. And I guess they assumed like just because it's more like alternative music that maybe he would have been into Nirvana. That's almost like what the interviewer thought.
Right. And
they were like, oh yeah, and they were like just rounding up the interview, and it was like, today is the 1 year anniversary of Kurt Cobain's death. Like, do you want to say anything about that? And they just looked almost like really like annoyed and just like blank for a second. He just went, yeah, he's got a good aim. Or something like that. And then they were just like, oh. They just like wrapped up the interview. I just thought it was a hilarious comment. The only thing he had to say was like, well, I guess, he had a good enough aim to blow his own head off.
That sounds very Dave Mustaine.
That was a very Dave Mustaine comment. But you can't help but watch it, and it's almost like so awkward and so almost like piss balls frank that it seems really funny.
That's a weird. The interviews at that time. Have you ever noticed it? If you watch 90s interviews now, they seem so awkward and like chaotic, especially of the grunge bands where they're kind of like, it's like they're viewing the interviewer as like some kind of school teacher who's like grilling them or something. It's always really a really weird tone. Whereas I guess now, like, people are so media polished. Yeah, they're almost doing. Yeah, people are doing their own media nowadays, aren't they? If you're in a band, so by the time you get in front of an interviewer, you're kind of like embracing it and doing it all properly. But when you watch it back then, and they're kind of clearly just sulking.
It's quite comical, isn't it? It is quite comical.
I wonder why that is. I guess that was just the grunge ethos, I suppose, wasn't it? It was a bit sulky and
like, you're not really happy to be here. I'm doing it because my record label told me I had to as part of the tour or something, and you're just going to be a bit of an edgelord.
Yeah, even though they clearly did want more publicity, but like you've got to toe the line and look like you don't want it.
Like you can watch a lot of interviews by bands like Nirvana and Megadeth and Metallica and even like Red Hot Chili Peppers from back in the 90s, and they're being very edgy with whoever's interviewing them,
being really difficult.
There's quite a controversial one with Anthony Kiedis, isn't there? Like from like 1990. It's like an MTV interview, and it's quite like an attractive woman. And obviously, like, little did he know what the world was going to be like in 35 years' time. But he's been like really openly like try it on-y with her.
Right.
But like to the point that it's like you can tell she's not really into it, but he just like keeps ramping it up, and you can tell he just thinks it's funnier and funnier. Like the more the interview goes on, it's worth a watch, to be honest. Like just try and watch it. Like Anthony Kiedis inappropriate like MTV interview. I bet if you just type that into YouTube, it would come up. And he's really just giving this chick the come on. And I can't remember what he's saying by the end, but he's like, you know, being like fairly graphic, like saying he wants to hump her and that. And like now it's used as a thing. Like, you know, I think like the very, you know, obviously it was like inappropriate, and I'm sure he looks back on it, he's like, oh my God, because you'd be like almost like instantly cancelled for that now.
Well, yeah, I guess what would he have? I mean, I suppose it was a long time ago, and he probably would have been like 22.
Yeah, yeah, no, 100%. Just like it's one of those things that's like just different times, isn't it? But I do remember like a very, you know, like seeing online and that people saying like, oh yeah, like you should boycott Red Hot Chili Peppers music for this and stuff. And to be honest, it's only probably it's while it is very inappropriate, it's only probably a very small percentage of the population that actually think you should straight up just not listen to Red Hot Chili Peppers music because of that.
I bet a lot of the time, like the actual interviewers were just like big fans of the bands as well.
Oh yeah.
Imagine like turning up and you're a big fan of a band, and then they're just like complete a-holes to you the whole time that you're trying to speak to
that
them.
would suck.
You'd leave and be like, oh man,
I would
don't want to meet them again.
I would hate that. It's actually like one of the reasons why I don't really want to, if I'm being honest with you, do like festival interviews and that for the radio. Like if it was like a one-on-one thing, like I invite somebody on the show and they're up for doing it, like very much like you today, I feel that's different then because they've personally agreed. And then they're probably going to be more up for it. But if you go to, say, like a festival, the bands are just probably told that they have to do a certain amount of media obligations. You have no idea how many other media obligations they've had to go through that day. So by the time they get to you, they're already probably tired and fed up.
Yeah.
And they're either preoccupied because they're about to go on, or they're tired because they've just been on. And either way, it's probably just a bit like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I would hate to feel like I'm like bothering someone, because also from from my point of view, like I don't want to talk to somebody if they don't want to talk to me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to like feel like I'm some like annoyance to somebody, both from like a self-respect point of view, but also just out of like a decency point of view. Like, I don't want to annoy someone. Do you know what I mean? Like, but
yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, that was kind of my experience. Like when I used to promote like UK hip hop nights, because that was like my life at the time. I was obsessed with like all of those artists.
That's so cool, man.
And when I'd, you know, obviously I wasn't interviewing them, but I tried to, you know, you'd get them to the venue and try to talk to them, and they couldn't have wanted to speak to you less. They would have been up all the night before partying. They'd have just driven like halfway across the country. They just want to get to their hotel, and they always come across as rude, which is quite deflating when it's like, I'm obsessed with this person's music. I thought maybe we'd like become best mates. And
yeah. That's what you think in your head, isn't it? Like beforehand.
Yeah.
Have you ever had like met like somebody that you're really into, or like a musician or anyone like that, and been really let down? It's like that whole like don't meet heroes thing. Have you ever had that?
Yeah, definitely. With my two favourite rappers back then was Dirty Dyke and Jam Baxter,
right.
And I don't dislike either of, like, it never put me off their music, because with Dirty Dyke, his whole persona, like he had an album. I guess I can just say the name of it because it's an album. It's called Return of the Twat.
Right,
like,
yeah.
His whole shtick was that he was a bit of an a-hole.
Right.
So when I met him and he was a bit of one,
you were expecting it a bit.
It was a little bit like, that's kind of a shame, but also like, you know.
I guess it depends how he was doing. Was he directly being an a-hole to you?
He was a bit difficult. Like when we got him to play Glastonbury, like he was really late for his set, and then kept having to go at the sound people over the mic while he was doing the set because they hadn't got the sound right, but he didn't turn up for his sound check, and like we ended up having to get a load of local rappers on to do like a cypher because they were so late, and then when they came in, he was kind of like started throwing my SM58 around, and then at the end when I tried to talk to him, he kind of blanked me. But like, you know, that was his persona, and he was it was relatively small because it was UK hip hop fame, but he was kind of at the height of it. And
yeah, again, it's almost like a bit of like he was like an edgy underground guy.
Yeah, he was kind of doing his persona.
That's his gimmick.
Yeah,
His gimmick, right?
like I get that. And then with Jam Baxter, like he was the other one, and like he was just like a massive acid head, and when I tried to talk to him a few times, admittedly in hindsight at the wrong times, I remember going up to him, I think it was in Thekla after he'd done a set, and he just had like a crowd of like these sort of Bristol raver girls around him trying to talk to him, and I just walked up and tried to get involved in a convo and chat to him instead. Obviously he didn't want to talk to me. It was sort of like gurning 19-year-old.
A gurning like hot 19-year-old.
Yeah.
It's like young lads are like, I'm not interested in you, mate.
Yeah. So like Yeah, like, so I don't really, but it was obviously a deflating experience, even if I don't like think any the less of them for that. But for that reason, yeah, I'd hate to have to interview someone who music I loved, because you might have a really bad experience of it. And...
Yeah, I think on the whole, for me, like, I think I've only ever had like one disappointing experience. I mean, I was just gonna say, I didn't know if I even wanted to say it. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, to be honest, it's probably just like Dave McPherson from In Me. And I don't want to talk badly of the guy, because obviously, yeah, like you were saying, I don't like. It's not like I have any ill will towards him or anything like that. But when I was probably like in year 7, probably about 2001, whenever it was that In Me first came out, I really, really liked him at the time. I really liked him, and that first album, Overgrown Eden. Yeah, it came in the CD. So when I bought the Overgrown Eden CD, which was quite a cool front cover actually, it was almost like a woman, but she was almost like a tree woman, and like she had a big pregnant stomach, but it was like a kind of looked like an apple, and there was like a like the little apple. What's it even called? Like the apple core, the little thing. Like the little bit that just sticks out the top. So yeah, that was like coming out of her belly button, and there was a big poster inside the CD, so I put that on my wall, and I loved that first album. I remember playing. Oh man, shout out one of the greatest video games of all time on the PS2, like the Lord of the Rings 2 Towers and Lord of the Rings Return of the King came for the... Mate, how good were they? Yeah. How good were they? I knew you'd like it because I
remember... remaster them. I'm
mate, me too. Mate, I would lose so many hours if they remastered that, because I was sure that you would have known it, because I know that Josh had it and played it a lot as well. So I'm sure, yeah, you obviously both did. But yeah, I just remember the amount of hours I would just listen to the album on repeat while just... playing the Aim on Hand level of like, 2 Towers on PS2 over and over again and stuff like that. And I absolutely freaking loved it. And then he played a couple of times in Bridgewater.
I think I can remember being at Cherries when you spoke to him once, a long time ago.
He wasn't. He was all right then. I remember. I don't know if he was just having an off day the second time, or if it was just more as a conversation unfolded and you realise that, like, actually, I mean, partly I don't blame the celebrities in a way, or the people that you're looking up to, because you have this unrealistic idea of what you expect them to be, and you form this idea in your head of who they are, which is that it's not their obligation to live up to that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you, as you said, you almost think you're going to be like besties for life after that.
And in my experience, they kind of lived up to exactly what their personas were. So I don't know why I shouldn't have expected them to be like, let's be mates.
Yeah, I guess in your experience, 100%. But I guess that the second time that I met him, which was only about, well, actually it was quite a while ago now. It was probably like 8 years ago. But it was about 6 or 7 years after that first time in Cherries, because that was like back in like 2009 or something, I think.
Yeah.
Might have
still in school.
Might have even been that night that I freaking got arrested and fought a riot van full of police to stop trying to get you arrested. It would
have been around that time.
It might have even been that night. Who knows? But it was around that sort of time.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Josh just walked off.
Yeah.
Josh was probably like, I'm going to go get some cheesy chips.
Well, I think I don't even know why, but you told them that you were my brother, as if that was going to make any odds to them. Like, just because Josh walked off, you were like, well,
I'm going to take up the mantle. Yeah. I'm now the king of Gondor. Yeah. I think it was just one of those things. When you've like known someone since they were like a baby, and you've just known someone all your life. And I think at the time as well, because when I think we were like 19, 20 at the time, and what, you're like 4 years younger than us, are you?
Yeah, I would have been, probably 15, 16.
And to 17. Me, just the person I am naturally, if like there's somebody I've known all my life who's still maybe at a bit more of a vulnerable age, like even though that's not how you obviously perceive yourself when you're like 15, 16, but like, you're technically still more of a child, whereas we were like young adults by that point.
I think I was a child until about 28.
Well, but all jokes aside, like legally or whatever. So I just think I for some reason I felt like it was almost like my responsibility to stick up for you.
Well, I think it worked out well for you, didn't it? Because they let you out, didn't they?
Kind of. Yeah, kind of, yeah. So they were like, throwing the book at me on the way to the station, because I resisted arrest for quite a long time.
Yeah. Because I can remember the police. It was icy and the policeman kept slipping over.
Yeah, and they kept trying to put the cuffs on me, but they couldn't put the cuffs on me because I was resisting quite a lot.
Yeah.
And in the end, I actually just walked into the back of the riot van, because I remember thinking the more I resist, the more of like a charge I'm going to get.
Yeah.
So I just walked in, and then they really dramatically like slammed the door as if they'd got me in, even though I like just walked in, which I remember thinking was quite hilarious. So I think I was like, where I was like wasted as well, I was sort of mocking them for that.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well done. Like, but at the same time, they were like proper throwing the book at me on the way, and I remember thinking like, oh man, this is going to get bad, because they were really like, they were like telling me all the different things almost they were going to charge me with, where they were like, because they were quite heated, and I guess at the end of the day you're all human beings, aren't you? So even though it was probably inappropriate of them, they were almost like telling me all the different things I was going to get charged with. But then luckily I got out. Basically, long story short, just like my Uncle Don was a police officer at the time. Yeah. And he just basically just really helped me out. So I didn't end up getting any repercussions for that, which was really good.
Yeah.
But I did think I'm pretty sure, I can't even remember like how it escalated particularly. A, because I was wasted, and A, because this is 16 years ago.
I can't even remember how it started. I've got no idea. All I remember is suddenly being...
I remember how it sort of started. I remember that we were all just walking down the road. They were out of order. They were definitely out of order. I remember that. I remember it was almost like this Aggie, a chip on his shoulder, power-hungry, quite young copper.
Right.
Started getting really aggro with you and almost like reprimanded you in the street. But it was because something like your mate Rory like threw something at you, and you went like, F off Rory, you PRICK, or something like that.
Right.
And you said it quite animated. And then all of a sudden this little Jobsworth copper
that
was
sounds
like,
familiar, actually.
was like, under section 54 of the Public Order Act, you cannot swear in public, or something like that. And I think I just like immediately was like, oh, what? So you never ever swear, do you? Or something like that. And then they were like, you can stay out of it, mate. You can stay out of it. And then I was just like, you know what I mean? It just escalated. And then before you know it, but I'm pretty sure you managed to get away scot-free. So, in a way,
I think you made enough of a scene for them to completely forget about me.
Instantly just kicked the hell out off.
By that point, like my swear, not even properly swearing, was like completely redundant.
It's quite hilarious in hindsight, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many of those things. Back in the day.
Just went loco on them.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know if it's such a thing now, but Bridgewater Police used to definitely be quite hot on, very young adults being out and about. I used to, like, the amount of times I used to get stopped and searched, like, completely randomly.
Really?
There were times where it was probably justified, where I might have, like, looked like I
you were like
to be
wasted.
Yeah. But then there are other times, because it happened on like an almost weekly basis, or even if we'd be driving around, that we'd be pulled over and have the car like turned out and stuff.
Really?
Yeah, and I think it was just the age that we were, and obviously the free time that they had back then. I don't know what it was.
Yeah, I mean, I think with that occasion, like, don't get me wrong, I definitely overreacted, but they were definitely in the wrong for. They essentially started it without trying to sound all school. School playground. They definitely like unnecessarily started that situation. Yeah, and then I think it's one of those things, and it's like. When you're or at least with myself, like when you're like 19 years old, you're so full of wee and vinegar, and you're so testosterone fueled. I almost just went from like 0 to 100, just like in a matter of like 5 seconds. Like complete, like obviously not a sensible thing to do.
Well, and those shows at Cherries used to be so good as well. We were probably pretty hyped up, I'd imagine, on the way out.
Yeah, they were dodgy though. Like, I remember like me and some of my more sensible friends had to look out for each other, because there were a lot of underage girls there, and a lot of those underage girls were like actively trying to get with like 18, 19, 20-year-olds.
Right.
Like some of my mates were like that. They're like Luke Rose and that were like 2 years older than me, and I was like 18, 19 at the time. So they were like already in their 20s, and there'd be like 14, 15-year-old girls there, like almost like, I'm not saying this is why they went there, but once they had a couple of alco
very
pops,
incriminating to Luke Rose now.
Yeah. Well, there's the reason they called him the Scrut. They used to call him the Scrut Master back in the day. Or was it the Scrut King? I can't remember.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
The Scrut Master. Yeah, I think it was the Scrut Master, because it was like the only girls he'd hang out with were like jailbait. You know what I mean? Like he was like 21, 22 at the time. Well, I'm pretty sure Polly is Mrs. Now he met in those days, and she was like underage at the time.
She's my age.
Well, exactly. So she was like probably like 15 at the time, and he was like 22 or something.
Does Luke listen to this show?
Probably not. We should make a clip of this and then tag him on social media. But no, I'm not obviously saying that he did anything with her then. They were mates. They were mates for years before they got together, right? But what I'm getting at is like, when you like have to look out for your mates, because obviously you're there getting wasted as well. And really, as a young man, you shouldn't have to be second guessing like, is this girl of age? Yeah. Do you know what I mean? If you're in a place that's like selling alcohol. But at the end of the day, we all do it. You try and sneak in places when you're underage.
I was drinking there underage for quite a while.
Yeah. I think what some of those young girls didn't take seriously enough was like, yeah, you might think it's cool when you're 15, 16 to try and hook up with an 18-year-old, but like that you're then incriminating that lad who like completely, you know, you're telling him, you're probably telling him that you're like 17, you know, and he's 18 and he's believing you, but then in the eyes of the law, then you're a nonce. Right? Like, so like that's something that you should take, you know, be very careful of, you know. So I remember me and my mates would be like, right, no, jailbait. Do you know what I mean? Like trying to look out for each other, sort of thing.
It makes me glad that I was terrible at chatting to girls at that time
Yeah.
when I turned 18.
Yeah. I don't even know how we got onto that subject.
Dave McPherson.
Man, what a branch off. What a branch off. So just be careful, young lads. Right? Moral of the tale. Moral of the story. But yeah, Dave McPherson the second time, he just seemed like, he was a super downer. It seemed like everything I said to him, he was just poo-pooing. So like, for instance, I was literally just being like, oh man, like, just want to say like, you know, thanks for that, you know, obviously writing like that Overgrown Eden album, like that album meant a lot to me back in the day. I actually would just like listen to it or repeat in my room and over and over again. And I don't know, I thought maybe he'd just be like, oh, cool, man, thanks very much, that's really cool. And he was just like, and he said just something like, in really almost like a grumpy way, he was like, in hindsight, I hate that album. And I was like, oh. I feel like you'd almost like pooed on my childhood, you know? Because it's still almost like, even though I don't really listen to the album now, I appreciate that at one stage in my life, it almost like, without sounding cheesy, it like meant a lot to me, that album, you know? And I was like, oh, and then another one of my favourite albums of his that I listened to a lot around 2015 was the Reverie Shores album, which was, I guess, the closest in me ever came to being like prog. And there was a lot of like really cool proggy songs and some really interesting songs on that album. And I literally said the same thing. I was like, yeah, I think this is like Reverie Shores is a really cool, interesting album and that. And then no joke, he was like, hate that album as well. And I was just like, and then I don't know. And then it was like, and then he sat down at the same table with us. I don't know if you remember that, Drew. I think you were there. And it was like we were sat on this big, we were sat at this like big round table at Cobbles. And I think there was members of Pretty Little Enemy there, because I think I remember like Louise and Jason and Ben, Dean and Georgia that were sat there. And then like Drew, Josh, I don't know, maybe like Luke and Willie, I don't know. And then Dave McPherson randomly, which was pretty cool. But me and Josh had queued up a load of songs on the jukebox. And it being me and Josh, one of the tracks, I can't remember if it was Josh or me that picked it, was a Metallica song. And then Metallica came on, and then he was like, no joke, it was almost like, you'd think he was almost like trying to fricking get under my skin, right? And then he was like, as soon as it came on, he was something like, I hate Metallica. And then I was like, I think I was just like, why do you hate Metallica? And he was just like, just do, or something like that. And I was like, oh, what? And then I just thought like, and then to be fair, I mean, yeah, he does like some cool bands. So I was like, oh, what bands like do you like that inspire you, or whatever? And I think he said like Black Crowes and like Queen, and I was like, okay, that's cool. But then I feel like almost like every song that came on the jukebox, he was just poo-pooing it. Yeah. And he just, I don't know, I don't know if he was just in a really negative headspace that day.
I guess that's the way you have to look at it, don't you? You have to just assume that he was having an off day, and that maybe the next day he might have thought like, oh, I was a real downer last night. I don't know why, I don't know why I was so negative.
Yeah, but that... Oh, yeah, he called you bullbag. Yeah, I remember that, because it was like... Because, yeah, you supported him that night, didn't you? And he was like, Drew bag, more like bull bag. To be fair, that was really funny. That was really funny. I mean, that's just such like a simple but natural joke, isn't it? Just a Drew bag, more like bull bag. In his like east like London accent. I've got this Anthony Kiedis, like a 30-second clip of this Anthony Kiedis interview up if you guys want to hear it.
Oh yeah.
Not this. This is an advert that's playing, unfortunately. if you like your cricket, but so Anthony Kiedis right now is trying to kiss this girl live on it. Oh, he literally is going in for it. Yeah, so I think that's like the sort of like the gist of the interview. But yeah, like so for people that couldn't obviously see that, yeah, he like got up and went and like physically kissed her and stuff, and you could tell that it made her feel a bit uncomfortable and stuff like that. And I think I've watched like the whole interview before, and he like, you know, when it's almost like a bit unrelenting, and it gets to the point that as like somebody watching it, you're like, you should probably stop now, mate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, sorry, he just like keeps going with it for ages. But say different times back in those days, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, and Red Hot Chili Peppers would have been quite praised for their kind of virility
Craziness
as well, weren't they? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like a big thing of their thing was how like sexual they were.
Yeah.
So by that point, he was probably so used to leaning into that and people being like, yeah.
Yeah, especially if you're like like a full-on rock star.
Yeah.
And in those days as well, it was still very much the old school rock and roll lifestyle. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like,
yeah,
you know, sex and drugs and rock and roll and
yeah. I mean, he's
groupies
quite in his biography. He's quite open about spending time with underage girls and stuff.
I remember hearing about that actually.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Which even when he wrote that like 20 years
I didn't
ago,
know he played at Cherries. Yeah. yeah. Come full circle, mate. Pretty nuts.
Californication.
Yeah, man. To be fair, that's a good album, man. I remember when the album first came out, I dug the album.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good album, man.
I still like some Red Hot Chili Peppers, yeah. But I mean, yeah, you're going to be a bit weird, I suppose, if that's your upbringing. Because I think his dad took him, like, used him for drug smuggling as well. Like, take him on flights with him and get him to help him smuggle drugs and stuff.
It's for odd parenting style, isn't it? Yeah. I'm just trying to like imagine doing that with my daughter.
Yeah.
Like, right, this is what you're going to do today. Strap all the frickin' drugs to her, put her on a plane. Like, bit of an odd thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah, they're not going to search you.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing I was just thinking, one little side note I want to clarify before we move on. I think Bullwinkle told me that around the time, you know, you were saying when you were younger you used to get like stopped by the police a lot and stuff like that. Didn't you used to like borrow, like Bullwinkle had like a little kid's like scooter or something, and you used to like bomb it around town to get to places and stuff?
Yeah, I don't know how often I did it.
Or was it like a one-off or?
I probably did it quite a few times, but I can remember coming back from Pevy Carnival.
Yeah.
And it was about 3 a.m. because I'd been at a party and needing to get down to near Bridgewater College.
Like Sydenham way.
To meet a mate.
Yeah.
And
see a man about a dog?
Yeah. And the quickest way to get there at that time of night was to jump on a little tiny kid's scooter. I think I got there super quick, but then bombed it down there, got what I needed to get, and then sent it back again.
I just quite like the image of it in my head, I think.
Yeah, it would look weird to anyone who looked. It probably would have looked like what I was doing.
Yeah.
At that time in the morning.
It just seems like I like the idea that it was almost like a comically small scooter.
Yeah, it definitely was. I had to hunch quite far.
That was quite like a funny image in my mind. Yeah, Bullwinkle was telling me you got like quite into like your Muay Thai kickboxing now.
I've been doing it for about 6 months. Yeah,
That's cool, man.
Because I came back very briefly over Christmas, and then when I got back, because I've been doing like weight training and stuff on and off for years, not taking it super seriously until quite recently. But I've always hated cardio. So just thought that'd be a fun way to do cardio.
Definitely tiring.
Definitely
tiring.
Yeah. Well, especially for me because I was so unfit in that way. So like, I had to get used to it. But then also, as well as doing the cardio, it also means if anyone starts on you, you can just roundhouse kick them in the head.
Yeah, so, elbow them. Elbow their head open.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that was kind of what I was thinking because you learn to use like every point of your body as a weapon.
The science of 8 limbs, they call it, don't they?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
that's a cool title, isn't it?
Sounds pretty badass, doesn't it? It makes you sound like a spider or something. But like if you were to get into a fight, not that I'd planned to, but you could resolve it quite quickly with just a little choppy kick to the calf, and the fight's kind of done. Yeah, rather than the dodgy thing of like punching somebody in the head
and also obviously that's like long-term ramifications from that. Whereas if you just like maim somebody's leg a little bit, well,
exactly,
it's like they
give them a dead
you,
leg, the fight's done.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's all like isn't it basically? It's like your nerve in your leg. It's like you got like obviously different nerves all throughout your body, isn't it? Essentially, it basically just hits a nerve at the perfect point, and then it like shuts down your leg, isn't it, or something?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, in one of my first lessons, I got told to just punch someone in the liver, and then they can't breathe for like 30 seconds, and they're not going to like get back into the fight after that point because they've just been winded. So yeah, it's essentially just cardio and then also learning how to fight in like a way that, like you say, doesn't have too much ramifications.
Incapacitating people without it being, like accidentally causing brain damage.
Yeah, exactly. Because I've I'm sure you've had a similar experience. Being like a big bloke, you weirdly get started on way more than if you're a little person.
Yeah.
I don't mean a dwarf. I mean like a smaller guy.
Dwarves are safe. No one starts on a dwarf.
So I've been in my fair few fights and I've barely ever won them. So good to have that security of knowing that you can end a fight without actually doing any damage.
Do you do much sparring over there?
Training? I've started sparring lessons a couple of months ago. I was only doing one a week, and it's you move on from like bag work once you've been doing that for a couple of months and you kind of know what you're doing, and then you just wear like all of the padding and start like light sparring, and then a few months down the line again, then it will get slightly heavier. But the way I think, especially in Muay Thai, it's like you can go relatively heavy on the legs and lighter the higher you go. And the idea is you're never actually punching somebody in the head in sparring.
No, of course, no, of course, I mean, I think some people do have a very bad reputation for that, obviously, but they're soon sort of picked out and demonised, rightly so, aren't they?
Oh yeah, I think because if you're just
if you're just trying to like take people's head off in sparring, that's not on.
Yeah, and you do notice like because you rotate constantly around the room, so you've constantly got another partner. There's always some people that go by default. I go really light just because like why not?
Yeah.
But you always get paired up with somebody who does that, and then somebody who takes it a bit too far. But I don't mind that as long as they don't go too hard. It's good to be tested a little bit.
Yeah, build up a certain tolerance to that,
to
or
actually
whatever.
get a few hits. Because some people, will just say, do you want to actually like hit each other? And say, yeah, crack on. Like,
and I think and at the end of the day, if it's like you can tell if it's like a mistake. If you do get hit a bit too hard, you can tell if it's like an honest mistake. So
I
it's
hit someone in the balls quite recently.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's a bit like what we were saying about rugby earlier on. Yeah, you might accidentally get like stood on, like with some studs or something. It's not very nice, but if it's like you're that precious about it, it's probably not a thing for you. It's a bit similar like that with something like that. Yeah, I've never done Muay Thai, but I've always I think it's really cool. I did a little bit of kickboxing, sort of I guess around like 2010, and did like some jiu-jitsu for a while. I really enjoyed that. But yeah, I don't think there was anywhere in town really that did like Muay Thai at the time. I think that's why I think I just did
still
more.
Not now. There's Somerset Kickboxing Academy, but there's nowhere near here to do Muay Thai.
I was going to say it was
to Bristol.
Yeah, it was more like that Western kickboxing style where they don't use elbows and knees.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I would have done that because I think I love the idea that like I remember. I can't remember if I read it or heard it. It's like your knees and your elbows are like the battering rams of your body. Like for a start, they're a lot less fragile than say obviously your hands. You've got loads of tiny little bones in your hands, so it's quite easy to break your hands.
Yeah.
Whereas like if you like elbow or like knee something, like it's a lot more force and you're less likely to damage yourself.
Yeah, I mean I've heard before that if you get a sort of sideways elbow right, it's essentially like an axe.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually a technique in Muay Thai is to try and just split somebody's eyebrow with your elbow. It's relatively easy to do if you get the right angle. And then once they're bleeding into their eye, that's the fight over.
They can't see anymore, and obviously they're going to get weaker the more they're bleeding out and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I'm quite into like MMA and stuff, like watching MMA, and I have been for like over 15 years now as well. So yeah, it's like similar. You see that in like MMA all the time, don't you?
I only got into like watching UFC relatively recently.
Yeah.
It is a cool sport to watch because it's a lot less. Like I like team sports, I like watching rugby, but there's a lot more to sort of keep track of throughout like a season.
Yeah.
Whereas like at UFC, you can learn who, for example, like Paddy the Baddie is.
Yeah. Tom Aspinall.
Within about 5 minutes. Yeah. And then follow his story quite easily. Yeah. Did you watch the Paddy fight? Like what was it? A month ago? 2 months ago?
Yeah. Who was it against again?
Michael Chandler.
Michael Chandler. That's right. Yeah. Michael Chandler. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's good.
Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. Watching it where I did as well. I watched it on the where was I? Darling Harbour in Sydney. It's like a really nice day with like this open front bar in the harbour, but it just gradually filled out with like Poms who wanted to come and support Paddy the Baddie. And then once that fight was over, then there was all the Australians there to support Volk as well.
Oh yeah, Volk, he's a ledge, man.
Yeah, that fight was awesome.
He's so good. He's so technical.
Yeah.
He used to be a rugby player, didn't he? Volkanovski.
Oh,
yeah. He used to be a rugby player before he became an MMA fighter. And I thought it was cool with Paddy as well because he pretty much dominated Chandler, but a lot of people thought that Chandler would win beforehand because the whole argument was that like, Chandler might have lost some fights in the last few years, but the caliber of his competition was definitely a step up to Paddy's.
Yeah.
Where Paddy almost like was making that step up to that elite level for the first time, and then just pretty much dominated Chandler, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, that was
great.
I got quite into to try and catch up with it all, listening to sort of pundit podcasts about UFC. There's actually a really good one Neil from In-Betweeners does.
Really?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I didn't
it's
know
really
that.
good. Yeah, he's with a guy called Stu Whiffin, I think, as a DJ.
Nice.
But yeah, they did a really good one. They were saying on that like the point that Paddy was at leading up to that fight, that was like the make or break fight, where if he lost it, he'd probably never break through into that UFC superstar zone. But if he did win that fight, then that was where he becomes a superstar. That was where he joins like Conor McGregor and people.
Yeah,
100%. And then obviously he did. So like,
yeah. I often listen to like Michael Bisping's podcast. You know, he was like middleweight champ at one point.
Right.
Lost an eye.
Huh?
Lost an eye.
Yeah, lost an eye. Yeah, in the UFC fight. Yeah, he's really cool. He's from a town called Clitheroe, which is just it's east, just about 30 minutes, I think, east drive of Manchester. But he's a really cool guy. He lives in America now with his wife. His wife's an Australian, funnily enough.
Does he do the podcast with an American bloke?
Yes. I think a fighter called Paul Felder.
Yeah, I have listened to that podcast. Yeah.
Believe You Me, it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, he used to come out to Song 2 by Blur back when he used to fight Michael Bisping. But he's just quite a legendary guy. And I think he was the first ever British UFC champ as well.
He won a championship with one eye.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
He passed all the medicals with like a glass eye,
But
for some reason they didn't identify that he actually was missing an eye.
Well, he got by through on luck. I've listened to him talk about it, and he would they do the eye test. And he says a lot of the time he would guess, and just like I guess fate was in his favor, because he would just accidentally guess the right thing, and then he'd be like, oh, and he said he'd like pass the exam, and he'd be like, oh my god, I cannot believe I just pure luck, just like blagged his way through it.
Yeah.
You know, they'd be doing the whole when you have you ever been to like Specsavers
Like
get your
an
eyes
optician
tested or whatever?
appointment.
They did that whole stuff with him. Obviously, when he'd be doing like that with his bad eye, he was just guessing. He was just straight up guessing.
That's insane. You'd think that would be such like a literal handicap that you wouldn't be able to fight properly, because you can't. That's half of the opponent's movements that you.
If
can't
you do
see.
that, you almost feel a bit off balance, don't you?
Yeah.
Like, it
It's
feels
a depth
weird.
perception, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like they
Which
could
is a
bring
massive
bring a knee up or an elbow or something.
Yeah.
You wouldn't even know it's there until like.
Say it was your left eye as well. It'd be so hard to see like a right hook coming.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
It sort of begs the question as to how good he would have been with two eyes.
Well,
To be a champion with one eye, that's pretty insane.
I mean, he was a great fighter. I mean, he was undefeated for a long time early on in his career, up until he had a draw with Rashad Evans, who himself was like a light heavyweight champion at one stage, and was one of the main training partners of John Jones when John Jones was on his trajectory. It was a long time until he even had a defeat. He was the first British Ultimate Fighter winner. That's how he got into the UK. He was in, I think, the Ultimate Fighter 2, and he just blitzed the competition. He was just
What was his? Because back then they didn't really have MMA. Didn't they? They had like a style. What was his?
Kickboxing. So he was like British kickboxing champion and stuff like that. But like quite early on, started going to like jiu-jitsu gyms as well and stuff. So he was quite ahead of his time.
Yeah.
So he's got like a good ground game as well. But his style would always be like to try and nullify the ground game and keep it standing and really mix up his punches and his kicks. And he was known for his striking style was much more. You see some fighters that are just like, looking for that one massive shot. That wasn't Michael Bisping's style. He had a lot more of that like pitter-patter style.
Right.
So, wearing people down with volume.
Yeah.
So like every punch would be like 40-50%, but it was the overwhelming volume. He would be like throwing like 100 strikes around, whereas like some people are almost just constantly looking for that haymaker, aren't they?
Yeah.
So he would just be like slowly wearing people down, like volume, and then by the time you absorb like 200, 300 strikes, you're freaking, your body's aching by that point, But yeah, it'd be like more like wearing people down with the accumulation of strikes, like TKOs. But I mean, don't get me wrong, he has got some good KOs. He had some great knees, like he won some good fights. You can, from knees and stuff back in the day. And when he won the championship, to be fair, I think it was a left hook, drop Luke Rockhold, and then a couple of strikes on the ground, and then that was it.
I guess that's what you want, really, isn't it? Is like, I guess a fighter could be really technical and good, but to watch them, that's not necessarily that interesting. You want somebody who's quite a dramatic fighter who might do like a. Did you see that fight a little while ago? I think it was Mauricio
Shogun
Ruffi.
Rua.
The guy who did like a spinning back kick and not KO'd somebody with it. It was like super dramatic.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I've seen that.
Oh, it's really cool. But I guess that's the type of thing, really, that you want.
Yeah,
It's
you
more
want some
interesting to
crazy
Yes,
finish.
100%.
Yeah.
No one wants to watch a UFC match and just watch it go to ground instantly.
I hate when it goes to ground.
Yeah.
I don't really, because I don't do jiu-jitsu. I don't really understand.
If it's like going to the ground and it's actually got like action on the ground, like I'm a real big fan of like slick submissions and that. But if it's more like you're basically just trying to eke out a decision.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to be the most fun match to watch. I think you always have to be looking for a finish. So like if you're taking someone down because you want to ground and pound the hell out of them and lay some elbows on top of someone in full mount or like try and set up a slick triangle choke, I'm all for that.
Yeah.
Like Chimera, some sort of slick submission. But yeah, like I think there's
Is Tony Ferguson the mental guy?
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Tony Ferguson.
He used to have like
what a funny career that guy had.
He used to have a movie where he'd pretend to pick up sand and throw it at his opponent's eyes. In the octagon. And it's like so weird watching it, but he's like not even like laughing when he's doing it. He was like, he's definitely a bit crazy. That guy.
Oh, 100. Yeah. He did. Who's going to carry the boat? That guy.
No.
He was his.
David Goggins.
Oh, David Goggins.
He was his trainer for a little bit, and he just clearly like trained him way too hard, and then he got to the fight and was just clearly like fully depleted. Like his whole training was him just like full pelt kicking like metal bars and stuff like that.
I think the person he fought during that camp, was Paddy the Baddie.
Right.
And I think Paddy was saying hilarious stuff when they were like interviewing Paddy in the lead up to the fight, and they were like, how do you feel about the fact that Tony Ferguson's training with David Goggins? And he was like, who's going to carry the boats? And that, and then he was all doing like, he's like, who's going to carry Tony out of the freaking octagon on that when I knocked him out? And just being like typical Paddy the Baddie. But he was like, once I've freaking knocked out Tony Ferguson, I'll knock out Goggins too, the freaking sausage. And he was like, but it was like, I mean, I think he kind of had a point, although he wasn't getting it across very eloquently. I think his point was, it's like, just like running up hills until you're like dying isn't necessarily going to make you win a UFC fight, which then Paddy proved, because as you said, like it was almost like Tony was so ruined going into the octagon that like I can't remember if Paddy finished him or not. I think he might have done, but either way, it was a pretty one-sided
Paddy
victory.
just understands the UFC and how to do it, doesn't he? It's a bit like Conor back in the day. Like the reason he was such an enigma is because he leaned so much into that like WWE style charisma and going into the press conference, especially as ones with like Nate back in the day and Aldo and people like that. That's what you kind of want to see from UFC. You want to see two people actually going at it in the presses and then try and like knock each other out.
I think as a Brit, one thing you just really appreciate, which maybe might seem a bit weird to Americans, it's just something I love about the fact that Paddy calls everyone a sausage. Yeah. It's such like a freaking hilarious insult. Sit down, you sausage. It's just about it sounds so like comical, but I love
really
it.
childish, and it's weird as well because he'll actually swear so much around that insult, but then just call people a sausage. Doesn't make any sense. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. I think Tom Aspinall's amazing. You know Tom Aspinall? He's like the interim heavyweight champ.
I'm not sure if I do.
John Jones is like afraid to fight him, isn't he?
Oh, that guy. Oh,
everyone's calling John Jones a duck, and and stuff like that. And like everything about John Jones at the moment, it's just like a little emoji of a duck. But yeah, Tom Aspinall, he seems like a real cool guy as well, because he's really down to earth and real sound. But at the same time, he's like probably literally the hardest guy in the whole of the UK. Do you know what I mean? It's like, like UFC heavyweight champ, like, but it seems like, I follow his YouTube channel, and he just seems like such a nice guy. Just really nice, down-to-earth guy.
Yeah, I don't know much about him personally. I've seen. I'm really hoping that Eddie Hall goes into UFC because he wants to. Did
you know about his MMA match he had recently, Eddie Hall?
Yeah, against that Czech guy.
No, Polish. Mariusz Pudzianowski.
Yeah, I watched it. Yeah.
So it was like a battle of World's Strongest Man winners. So Mariusz Pudzianowski has the record of 5 World's Strongest Man wins, which is nobody else has been able to do. Eddie Hall is obviously one of the UK's best ever strongman, holds a World's Strongest Man title, and also was the first ever man to deadlift 500 kilograms, which is insane. They had an MMA fight about a month ago, and Eddie beat him pretty much instantaneously.
Yeah, he just threw him on the floor and then just started punching him.
When he launched him across the ring, that was cool. That was cool.
There was some controversy, wasn't there? Because people were saying that he was punching him in the back of the head, but I think that was just accidental.
While I definitely think there were some illegal shots, you could tell it was accidental, and he seemed to very sincerely apologise to Mariusz afterwards, and Mariusz, I think, released quite a classy statement and basically said, like, things happen in the moment and stuff, and he knows that Eddie's a good guy and wouldn't mean to do it, and he basically was like, congratulations, sort of thing. So it seems like they're both pretty cool about the whole thing. But
it must be pretty hard to find people in his weight class for fights.
Oh yeah, super heavyweight. Yeah, because like the UFC doesn't even have a super heavyweight class. If you can't make 265 pounds, you can't fight in the UFC. Because I know that Brock Lesnar, when he went into the UFC from WWE, he was like 300 pounds in WWE. So he had to diet down. He had to lose 35 pounds to fight in the UFC, which is quite a lot if you think about it. It's quite a lot, isn't it?
But if you can get there, you're a monster.
kilos. Yeah.
So Eddie Hall could only really fight in like Freak Show or whatever?
Yeah, like Freak Show and May events, like like that. Yeah, I don't know. I know there's a lot of people who say that UFC should have a super heavyweight division, because it would just be cool. But yeah, at the moment, did you see that hilarious MMA fight as well? And obviously the UFC would never sanction this. Eddie Hall had a 2-on-1 MMA fight against 2 featherweights.
Yeah, he was just throwing them around.
Mate, it was comical. It was like the whole idea, like who's better, like 1 super heavyweight or 2 trained like featherweight MMA fighters. And I think they were like twin brothers as well, which made it even more hilarious. And they were both like trash talking Eddie leading up to the fight so much. And then the fight started, and they both just tried to like swarm him from both sides. But Eddie like literally power bombed one, and then as the other one ran in, like freaking savagely KO'd the other one, and then like TKO'd the other one that he just power bombed by the time they were getting up. And it was watching like a dad beat up his 2 kids. Yeah. That's what it was like. It was brutal, but it's quite funny to watch if you just want to watch it. Yeah, just YouTube Eddie Hall 2-on-1 MMA match. It's really cool.
Well, he lost his fight with Thor, didn't he?
A boxing match. Yeah.
That was a boring fight though.
It was.
He was just doing like crosses the whole time.
Yeah,
that was all he did.
Afterwards, I mean, who knows? Because you just don't know, do you? Like, but Eddie did say that afterwards. Apparently, he like went into the match with like an injured shoulder or something, and he didn't want to tell anyone about it. But he said that I can't remember which arm of his. He said that basically one of his arms was like unusable.
Well, he did just keep one arm up the whole time, and all he did was just that.
Yeah. So I think that like his left arm or whatever was like screwed up, like he could barely move it. So he said that he was essentially fighting Thor one-handed. But I mean, at the end of the day, you can always come up with excuses, can't you? So I'm not trying to make excuses for Eddie either, because I mean I'm a big Eddie fan, so I would have loved it if he'd won. I think, but yeah, who knows? But
do you think that Thor beat his deadlift record?
I personally don't think that it should count in say like a record. I just think at the end of the day, I think it's a bit like a lot of the things that I've heard Eddie say about it. So for people that don't know, so Eddie Hall, a very officially in competition in a sanctioned event, was the first man ever to deadlift 500 kilograms. And Eddie and Thor had a vicious rivalry in the strongman scene for years, like going back tit for tat, like because they were just 2 of the best guys in the world. And then during COVID, Thor, and you could tell he almost really just wanted to get one over on Eddie because they had a rivalry. But Thor managed, and yet again, this is a lot of people would debate that he even did it, because it's like, how can you tell? Because nobody was there other than like his gym mates and his dad. But Thor put up a video of himself on like the internet deadlifting 501 kilos. So he broke Eddie's record by 1 kilo, and then became only the second man ever to do 500 kilos or more. And some people, obviously, that are big fans of Thor, are like, well, at the end of the day, it's 501, and Eddie's only done 500, so Thor's now the new record holder. A lot of people put like hilarious comparisons, like, imagine if someone videoed themselves on a field, like running 100 meters, and then just said it was faster than Usain Bolt's record, and then we're like, I'm faster than Usain Bolt, or do you know what I mean? Or imagine if Usain Bolt had done that back in the day. Like, no, you wait until like the World Championships or the Olympics or whatever is like the top thing of your sport, and you do it there, and there's like actual officials there. And in weightlifting or strongman, you actually have like calibrated plates, which are all literally every single one is weighed beforehand, like by someone that obviously isn't in your team, and then the bar's completely set up, so you don't even touch the bar until you go out there and do it to make sure it's all fair, and then you just go out and pull. Whereas in Thor's, it was in his gym. Apparently his dad weighed the plates, which is like, just makes you think a bit like, well, your dad's obviously going to be biased towards you. Yeah. And a lot of people just, I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying that Thor didn't actually do 501, but I think you could even argue the psychological advantage of, maybe, if it's your own bar, your own plates, in your own gym, with your dad there, like psychologically it's nowhere near the same pressure as like Eddie did it in like an arena with like thousands of people watching him, live like cameras on him. Like there's a lot more stress and pressure going into an event like that than just like essentially doing like an Instagram video. Do you know what I mean?
And also it's 1 kilo.
Yeah.
Such a tiny amount. Like, because I mean, weight plate, they're not spot on, are they? No. They can be off a little bit. So like surely if you were going to make a point and break the record, you do it by like at least 5 kilos.
Yes.
1 is ridiculous. It doesn't mean anything.
It almost just seems a bit almost like petty, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it
really
does.
petty. He might as well have just done 500 as well and been like, I've also done 500.
Yeah.
Rather than be like, I've beat you by 1 kilo.
Yeah, it's quite comical, isn't it? It's quite comical. All right, guys, I think we're going to have to leave it there. So we've done 2 hours. But yeah, thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah,
I'll have to do it again, man. To be honest, I feel like we could probably talk for another hour, but...
We'll be back in 3 years' time.
Yeah, man, for the follow-up.
Yeah.
Well, Jake will be a full bogan by that point. But yeah, cheers for coming on, man. And thanks to everyone for listening to another Pandora's Box. We love you. See you next time.